All right, welcome everyone. We have another special podcast. Very entertaining, energetic, lovely young lady, a friend of mine, Liv. How are you doing for the 74th podcast we got? How's it going?
I'm great. It's good to see you. It's been a long time.
It has been a while. I know we're Burning Man buddies. We've been in poker together for a bit, basically, I guess since the kind of started the beginning of it all. So it's crazy times in the world. There's a lot to talk about. I know you've kind of segued out of poker. You are officially retired. Is that your stance on poker, or not?
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I haven't. I've played like a couple of online tourneys this year, like 2 maybe. I do play an almost weekly online home game against some friends, but I don't know if you can even barely call it poker, honestly, what we play.
It's safe to say that poker is a special place in your heart. You always like to play, but it's not. You're not grinding. You're not hitting the circuit. There is no live circuit now anyway. COVID is taking over, but you have been out of the game for a little bit in terms of taking a break, and obviously you started a YouTube channel. You seem very into physics. You've got a lot going on. So I do want to. We have so much to cover. It's late. You're over across the pond, and we don't want to keep you too long. So we want to cover a lot. Let's just give the viewers who may not know who you are. I'll give a brief intro. You've won 2 of the majors. You've won a World Series of Poker Bracelet, actually a tag team event with your hubby. I guess not officially married. You guys have been together since I feel like forever with Igor, which is pretty special. I want to talk about that. But you've also won an EPT, almost got a triple crown. You got 2 of the 3 majors. But give us like the early on, Liv. Where did you get into poker? Give us kind of like your growing up. Just fast forward, and then we'll dive into poker. Give us the backstory.
I graduated uni when I was 21 and needed to find a way to make money. So I started applying for TV game shows, as you do. And on one of these shows, it turned out that they wanted 5 beginners to teach them how to play poker. So I was on this show. First hand of poker I'd ever played. It was also my first time on TV. It was very intense, but completely fell in love with the game. It just like everything about it spoke to my personality. And then I started like playing more seriously in sort of like 2000, more regularly, at least around like 2007, 2008. And then like really started playing like more major tourneys around 2009, and then had like my big breakthrough in 2010 when I won the EPT, and just never really looked back from there. Very cool. So it's been like the last 10 years of my life.
I do see, yeah, I guess a decade, you could say 10,000 hours, an expert. You're definitely an expert in poker. I mean, the debate about women in poker and this and that, in terms of that, you're definitely in the conversation. You're a world-class, great player, but in terms of women, you're right there. There's not many household names, I would say, in poker. It's just there's not a lot of women in poker. You're definitely one of the known and successful, established females that have done well in the sport. I do see it says Ultimate Poker, the Showdown, which this is what you're talking about. Aired on 5. Is this the show? That was like Phil Helmuth, Andy Duke, Dave Elliott.
It was like the early days of Ultimate Bet, when they were called Ultimate Poker, I think. I don't even know, but I mean, obviously I didn't know who they were or anything. I just, they sponsored this show under the premise of like, what personality type is best suited to learn poker? And they wanted like 5 beginners,
Shoot. Can you hear me? My net. I think my net.
It might be mine.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I don't know. It's weird because my it seems like my thing's spinning, but it might. I'm not sure. It should be.
I hear you. So.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. I can hear you clearly. So you're doing this show, this early on show. You got into it. How did you actually get selected for it? Or
they put out like an advert in the papers and like online, and I think the way a lot of these like game shows and reality shows recruit. And I saw the advert and I was like, would I like to win £100,000? That sounds great. I love games. I'm very competitive. Sounds like fun. So yes. And then and I didn't end up winning that show. And in fact, I played atrociously. Like I misread the board. I didn't notice that there was 4 diamonds out there, and I rivered a straight. My opponent rivered a flush, and like when I then noticed after like saying I raise, basically committing all my chips, I noticed that there were 4 diamonds out there, and I like visibly went. So about like, 101 of how not to play is
Right.
what I did on that show. And then I had like this big meltdown, and it was like, made perfect reality TV, but I made a complete fool of myself. But nonetheless, I loved the shows. So I loved the games so much. I then started like playing down at a local card club. There was the old Gutshot Club in London. Many like old school London poker players might remember that club. And then like started taking the game more seriously from there.
And so then you did have a were you, I think I remember now that it's like in my head, you were sponsored by Ultimate Bet for a while. Did you have a deal with them, or you were what? How
like
getting sponsored? That's pretty cool. So that's early on.
It was amazing. I mean, let's be real here. The reason I got sponsored was not because I had results or anything. It was because I was, a reasonable looking girl who I think could speak well about the game. And that definitely helped in me getting a sponsorship deal. But, I'm never, the first one to admit that. And it was great. It gave me the opportunity to go and play in some bigger events and to go and like, it just gave me the freedom. I had like a 9-to-5 job, and it gave me the freedom to quit that job. And
what was that like when you called in to quit? Did you say, "Hey, I'm going to tour the world and play poker professionally"? Like, what are you just like, "I'm not working anymore"? How did that go?
Well, actually, the way it went down, I didn't have the sponsorship deal yet. That was it came like a year and a half, 2 years later, thinking about it. Okay. But fairly soon after. But no, the way it went down was I won a package. There was like a £300 satellite to the 5 Diamond Classic in Vegas. Winner take all. It was like a $19K package, which, it was way more than half of my annual salary at this job I was doing.
Right.
And I won this package, and my boss was like, I'd used up all my vacation for the year, and he was like, you can't go. I was like, well, give me unpaid leave, or, so I can go. And he's like, no. So I just quit, because it was like, well, I want to do this. Like, am I really going to pass up a buy into this 15K and 19K package to go to Vegas for the first time? Fuck that. So actually, it was my second time to Vegas, but yeah. So I quit, and then played that. That was the first time I met I remember I met Negranu and all like the Bingers and all of that crew back in the day, and got to know all of them. It was amazing. And and then I started from that point onwards. I mean, again, I played terribly I was drawing dead in that tournament. I was just terrified.
I don't know. Poker back then was pretty special. I don't know if anyone was drawing dead. I think it was there was a lot. But I get what you're saying. You were clicking buttons. You didn't really. You were having fun. You weren't studying or really knew what was going on. I
was studying. No, it wasn't so much that. I was studying, and I was thinking about the game a lot, but I just was scared money. That's the main thing. Like, I was just, I was playing for stakes way beyond. Like, I mean, the £300 buy-in was huge stakes for me to play the satellite. So now to be playing a 15K buy-in against what I perceive to be the best in the world at the 5 Diamond Classic, like,
you were playing for life, literally. You had your job.
Literally.
You were like,
my job was gone. Like, this was just I was like, oh my God, this is my story. I'm going to come and I'm going to win this with for $2 million, whatever. And this is it. Yeah. Did not happen, but it was like a baptism of fire. But more than that, again, I then made all these incredible friends, even off the back of that trip, who are still I still know today, and have been just great supporters. So it was just really instrumental moment in my career, in just getting my career started.
And what about your parents, family, friends? What were they thinking when you said, look, it's either quit my job, go do this, or sure, you got to go for it, no way, or I don't know, how was the support system?
They thought I was insane, but they were supportive nonetheless. I've been very lucky in that regard. My family they've always been remarkably, they'll give me advice and guidance and say, look, we don't think this is a good idea, or we think it is. But ultimately, I think they realize that, when I make my mind up on something, I'm really likely to change it, at least certainly not back then. And so it just, they were just concerned that I was going to lose all my money or get taken advantage of or something like that. But
reasonable concern.
Yeah, the normal parent stuff, but they were still really supportive, and they knew how much I loved it. And I don't think they ever expected me to have a conventional career. I was always a bit of a weird kid anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, well, all right. Well, they were poker, and you found your way to poker. You got in, you got sponsored, you got paid to do and travel the world. And obviously, we know that being on the tour, getting to do some cool stuff, meet a lot of interesting people directly or indirectly from poker. What was it when you said? Because at that point, it's sort of up in there. When did you say, you know what, I'm going to really do this? Was it when you got a sponsorship deal? When did you say, okay, this is going to be what? Did you think you were going to be playing for a decade or so? Like, was this?
Yeah. I was like remarkably, in hindsight, I was remarkably confident for what my actual both skill level and I just was like so sure I was going to make it. It was really strange, to the point of probably delusion. But at the same time, it gave me the confidence to like just really go for it. I believed that I just believed I was going to be I was going to make, achieve my goals. I didn't know when I was going to achieve them, but I knew I was going to I was determined to win a huge major. And
yeah, don't spoil. We want to talk about the Triple Crown opportunities and the double. We're going to get to that. We're going to go through your memory lane. That's one of the things I like to do on the podcast with the poker portion of the podcast, which I would say it's like high 90%. The first ever Hendon Mob cashes are all final tables. Like literally every single person I go up, they always are like, it's not 30th or 50th or 90th. It's just like final table. And it looks like you had a couple in a row. Obviously,
well, you know why that is, right? When
because if you do it, it keeps you in the game, right?
It's a selection effect. It's a selection effect. Like it's almost certainly the ones that someone has to get, out of all the thousands of people who play poker for the first time, a percentage of them have to get lucky. And more often than not, the ones that are the lucky ones early on in their career are the ones who will continue playing because they've had that taste for it. And I mean, I'm sure I fell in that category. So
that's interesting. That's kind of what I allude to. I believe there's something to that. Of course, like maybe you did just not cash your first one, and then your first cash was a final table. But it's just a bizarre stat. I mean, this looks like a free roll, but you did have a decent score here pretty early on. You hit a first for 42,000 off of 2K. What was that like? Was that significant to your life role?
Oh, that was amazing. I had gone out to EPT Copenhagen as a presenter. I was doing some just like random reporting, which I love doing, like interviewing the players. And then while I was there, Ladbrokes put on a free roll for any ladies who were there to just play. And again, it was like a winner take all free roll where you won like a 2K package to play in their European Ladies Championship. And out of this like 150 ladies, I think who played or something like that, I won that free roll. So then I played the actual, main event, and then I won that. So it was a nice little spin up.
You're parlaying. You were making moves in like the Jefferson.
Infinite ROI. That particular tournament.
Very, very cool. What would you say though? Like let's fast forward a bit because I don't want to run through the whole thing. But this is, I mean, it's very interesting because you're in 2007, 2008. Were you playing online now by this time, like grinding tournaments, cash games? What was your poker playing like breakdown? Like, do you remember
I mean, I've played relatively little online, considering considering what I should have been doing. I should have been playing more online, but I really loved just like everything about live so much. I really just enjoyed the atmosphere, the socializing of it. Like my favorite thing was to go down to the local card club and just like, they had their £5 rebuy tournament. And that, I think I won that twice, which again was like an insane crapshoot. Like I think the average stack was like 12 big blinds at any given moment. So like how, but again, just like this incredible good fortune. I was not a good player, like without question. And neither was really anybody else, but I was not beating the field, put it that way. I don't think anyone was, considering probably the rake, but I wasn't playing that much online. It was mostly live. But I was like reading a lot and studying a lot.
Do you miss that? Like, I think sometimes, like I remember growing up, like playing 1-2, 2-5, going with a couple of my best friends and going to a casino and, playing 12, 14, 18 hours. And the money was like, it was like so important. And every, like, it was just like crazy. Like talking about £5 rebuy in the pub, like those days of poker, it's like, how often you get to go and just like sit and mess around or do it. Like now there's like, you know, you got a YouTube channel, you're doing content, we've got a ton of other stuff to talk about. It's just like different parts of our life. You know, I got a baby now. It's like, I'm not just going and playing 1-2 at a casino for fun. Like, and it is actually some of the more enjoyable. I think it goes in phases, right? Like probably some point later in our life, maybe get to a point of comfortability or things are calmed down and then maybe get back in and you hit that. But like, I feel like our specific age and timeline of like where we're at, it just seems like it's hard to like pocket off time for stuff like that because time is such a crazy thing.
Right. It's the ultimate limited resource. And for me personally, like I've just, you know, I've scratched my poker itch, you know, and everyone gets there at some people actually never get there. Like presumably Doyle has just not got there. He loves the game that much and he's still playing it now. Like it's just his whole thing. And that's great. But for me personally, like it just ran its course. I started finding it not as exciting as I used to. And that's okay, you know, like, but now that I'm playing, well, it wasn't so much that, it was just that it wasn't giving me the pleasure and rewards that it would have taken for me to continue playing at the amount. And I think, you know, when you've been playing for such a long time and you're sort of, it's not like you're seeing novel situations anymore. You know, part of the reason why I enjoyed it is because there was always a new novel situation, something I could not have conceived, some new like weird, even like difficult rule arbitration that needed to happen, or there's always something exciting. And after a while, I just like, I've been there, I've done that, I've seen this now, and it just, the thrill wasn't, you know, there anymore. But that was just because I've been doing it for, and also I'm just like,
it makes a lot of sense and goes through waves too, or you find something in physics, or like, I'm going to do this YouTube, I'm going to do that, I'm going to learn this, I'm going to study that. And it's more, you know, it goes like it's pockets, you know, it's something that you could wake up and feel motivated or see some kind of, you know, series or something interesting, or you say, you know what, once COVID's over and there's some event, you go for a week with friends and you just pop one off. Cause that's what I want to talk about, popping one off. And that's exactly what you did. So you hear 2008, you're playing, you know, you're grinding, you're playing some stuff, you're hitting some decent little scores, keeping afloat, doing whatever. And then boom, just out of nowhere. I mean, there's no 100K score on the radar. There's no, you know, you're playing relatively small buy-ins. You do hop in a 5K here, but nothing like insane. I guess you got in a 25K. That's a big event. You cashed.
I satellited it. I satied my way in. So that's how I played all the mains.
That was a big that is a big tournament, 25K buy-in, but you sat in, but then, you know, you flash up here and then all of a sudden in April 2010, you just rifle one off. Well, this was a big one for 2.4. The tournament you were in, you got pretty deep. And I remember this actually. These are the 25Ks were insane. The value and sort of this period of poker where the 25Ks got that type of turnout. But here you're at EPT and it's a 5K buy-in, a 5,000, and you hit a $1.7 million score. I mean, what is this? What happened here?
Well, that was a crazy story because I wasn't even meant to be at that tournament. I had gone down to the south of France to a Chile poker event, I think it was. Yeah, it was like Alex Dreyfus's old online site. He'd invited me and Liz Lou, and we played that. And then she was like, "Oh, there's a tournament going on in Italy." And I hadn't planned on going because it was, you know, it was big tourney and it was like out of my buy-in range really. Yeah. And then the volcano, remember the Icelandic volcano went off. And so
last week, I don't remember. There's so many crazy things.
It happened in 2010. Yeah, no, of course. It
sounds
2010.
Familiar.
Yeah, the volcano went off and it shut down European airspace. No planes could fly.
Okay.
And so I couldn't get home. And so I was like, all right, well, let's go over to this. So we jumped on a train and went over to Italy, eventually to San Remo. And that night we got there was a €500 satellite to the main event the next day. So I hopped in that last minute and then I won my seat. I used to be like the satellite queen. I was very good at it. And handy skill, I guess. And so then
nice. Satellites are great. I think today
they're the best.
Some of the best value there is.
Oh, yeah,
they're kind of fun. You just get a nice.
They're torturous. They're torturous, but they can be a nice way of like spinning it up. Yep. So then I won my seat and then I played it, you know, the next day. And then 6 days later, I won the whole thing.
Hold on a second. So if there's no volcano, we're not talking today probably on a podcast. You may not even be in poker. This was like, you were kind of in and out. You were doing some stuff, but this is 2010. Were you sponsored by UB at this time or no longer? Had UB gone down? What was happening? Like, I was still,
I was still on their, on their sponsored roster, but they didn't put me in the tournament.
Okay. So you go over there, you win a satellite, you hop in 6 day. We're talking like the real grind. This is one of the major events. For those that aren't familiar, the EPTs, there's basically 3 sets of tournaments. There's the EPT, which is like now PokerStars, I guess, championships. They've kind of changed the name, but there's the WSOP, and then there's the World Poker Tour. Those are, if you've won those, that's a real deal. So this was a real deal. And you never really, I mean, what did it feel like? This was 1,240 entrants. At what point in this tournament do you remember, like, did you have chips the whole time? Were you so focused, like off your phone, what happened to win? How do you win 1,240 person event at this time without playing that much? You're not one of the grinders. You're not playing every event. You're not.
I mean, I had been grinding by this point, to be fair. I think I played quite a bit, but like nothing. Again, not many big main events.
EPT. You're playing.
Oh, no,
like going to major event. You've played some.
I'm pretty sure this was my first ever EPT. I think it was either my first or my second. To be honest, I was I was super in the zone. I remember that. Like incredible focus. But it just felt like it was my tournament. There's really no other way to describe it. I think everyone, whenever they win a big tournament, were like, yeah, it was my tourney. But, I've won other tournaments since, and it was like, I didn't really know, it was like, it was more of a rough journey. Whereas this, it just like, it was so smooth. I mean, there were like ups and downs, obviously. And, I was like pretty short stacked all day 1, short stacked for most of day 2. And then like spun it up. And then I was like chip leader from like 3 and 4. And then like, lost it all again, but hung in there. And then it just, I don't know. The deck was on my side. I played for the most part well, but
2 out. Look at the payout. I mean, 700,000. Was there any talk of deals? Did you know the people at the final table?
No.
Did you have swaps?
We did do a small deal heads up. Sorry. Yeah, we did do a small deal heads up. But it wasn't like, it was like a small saver, basically. It was still pretty staggered between the 2. Yeah, but no, I didn't know any of the players.
And what about swaps? You got in for €500. Did you have did you sell pieces, any swaps?
I'd sold off some.
Sold some, which is nice because you satellite in for 500, you lock up a win, then you give. It's nice until you win 1.7 million,
and then you have to
pay out like. Yeah,
but it was to a very good friend who bought my action, who'd been buying my action for a long time. So it was wonderful to
of course, pay him out. No matter
Yeah.
what, you're going to be over the moon. So, but did you feel pressure? Because let's be honest, being a female, as you mentioned, getting a deal, it's the poker sites, especially in this time, they're hungry. There's not many female players that can articulate the game, that look the part, that can be involved. Were you thinking about that? Did you, because like the reality is, let's take everyone in that field, or let's take the final 100 or final 20. For you to be a female and win it, it's big for poker. It's bigger. I mean, it's huge for you because you getting second or third is cool, but you may not get the dealers you get. You may not get like to be able to put that on the resume. Did you think about that? Was that like in the back of your mind, like you knew this is worth so much more than even what the money was? Did you know it?
Yeah. Yes, I was very aware of that. And I mean, my goal had been also to, PokerStars was the holy grail of like achievement for me. I wanted to be on Team PokerStars. They were like the biggest site at the time.
Yeah, growing up, I mean, that was
it was like that was a dream. And I felt confident that if I made it into the top 3, they would probably be interested in me anyway. But I knew that first was like what really mattered. So I was going for that. And even though in like retrospect, I think I doubled my net worth even by coming 9th, so it really I should have been probably selling off more. It was not good bankroll management as I was laddering up, putting it that way. But it was definitely like a major goal. And I mean, the other thing that came out of it as well was like the media attention. And I'm not talking about just like poker media, like mainstream media attention I had for the week afterwards was like beyond anything I could have imagined. I was like, Daily Mail was calling me, the Sun, the Telegraph, the Times, like you name it. Every newspaper wanted to do an interview, and it was I loved it, but it was very overwhelming. And they, like I was on the front page of newspapers. They were like, because I think I had, good story. Oh, astrophysics graduate, she wins £1 million, etc. And that was pretty nuts.
Yeah, it's gotta take a whirlwind tour. You need to probably hire a manager, PR, or something like.
Yeah, I did. I thought about getting a PR agent because I didn't really know what the hell I was doing, and I also was aware that it was like a pretty rare opportunity, and you can often leverage these things into bigger things. But yeah, it was pretty amazing journey.
And how did then approach, was your UB deal like kind of fizzling out, or just sort of had a contract that was up, and then did Stars and some other sites immediately say, hey, like we'd love to sign you? Was it, I mean, for Stars, obviously it's perfect scenario. They win their main event, 1.7 million, female, trying to get females into the game, and it's a it was great. Did they just immediately approach you and say, hey, let's talk or let's get involved? Like, and that
pretty much, yeah.
So, and what were your family saying then? Were they, I mean, because it is kind of surreal if you really think about it. I mean, listen, I played forever. I've hit some scores, but like 1.7 off of 5K, it's not even like 100K or 25K where you win, like, you can win 500 and it's great. And it's like, if you're playing a lot of 25 buy-ins or 50 buy-ins, it can go pretty quick. We're not even probably a 5K scooping 1.7 is like, it's the holy grail. Like you hit like the literal lottery. Like you really did it. So, what was their reaction? They must be think it's make believe, right? Like they just can't believe.
I mean, they just were speechless. I mean, my mum was, obviously over the moon. She was a little frustrated that because she'd always usually come out. She she would often come and watch me play, right. And because of the volcano, she couldn't fly down. Normally, she would have hopped on a plane from London and come for the final table, but like there was no one there. There was I think I had one or two friends like actually there railing me, because it was also like it was held in it was held in the theater of the casino, and everybody had already left San Remo to go on to Monaco, so there was just no one around really, with the exception of like one friend, which is it was fine, it's nice, I'm not complaining, but it was like slightly weird.
What was it like celebrating? Do you remember when did it finish? Because I mean, this is obviously life-changing stuff. I mean, it's a big deal. Like, what did you do afterward? Did you make any purchases? Did you go out and celebrate?
No.
Was it so late you just crashed?
I got out. I feel like I got outrageously drunk that night with some some of the poker media who had been so supportive. I think just a bunch of people, how it often is, like the dealers and the media go and have drinks afterwards at the end of an event, and I just joined them. It was great.
Very cool. Well, that is special. And I do want to, again, I don't want to spend, because you have so many, you're very unique too in poker, where you have a lot of other projects. You've done TED Talks, you've got a YouTube channel. So I do want to not just focus on the past and some poker results, but I do want to just kind of scroll through, talk about your career. You've had a lot of traveled the world, and we've been on so many stops together. And obviously Burning Man, I do want to cover as well, which is cool that we've poker are the group that's done it. But you also did win a WSOP bracelet, and not that long ago. It was 2017, and with your boyfriend. Is it boyfriend? You guys can get, what's going on with you guys? Because how long? I mean,
we're 6 years.
Okay.
Six, like 6.5 years now. So we're effectively married. Like, we call each other husband and wife. We're not actually married. It's become like a whole joke thing where we pretend to engage, like propose to one another. We've like mock engaged so many times in very romantic ways, but then we're like, psych. And but we're very much, life partners, put it that way.
Okay. So, and tell me what that was like then. Cause you all of a sudden, in the tag team, I remember seeing this. I played with some of my best friends, and it was fun. Like, the idea is cool, especially the 10K one, which is, it's a real tournament. The 1Ks are a little gimmicky, and it's, so many people, and it's like, what are you going to do? But you guys were at a 2-team tag team. I think you had to have 2 to 4. What was that like to actually grab a bracelet as like a poker player to win that? What did that feel like to get that done and to do it in that capacity? I mean, that's crazy.
So good. So good. I mean, again, like, obviously winning a bracelet is every poker player's dream, or most poker players' dreams. But to do it in such a fun way with, my love and best friend, that is Igor, to like be able to win a bracelet together, and we both physically have one, and it was just wonderful. It was in some ways
I mean, if you look at this table, there were some really good players there. It's not an easy.
I mean, Igor played most of the final table. I mean, which just makes sense. He's a better player than me. Why would you not put your best player forward? I played all of day 1 and half of day 2, and then he played like the latter half of day 2 and then most of day 3. I played a few hands at the FT, but yeah, he played most of it, and it was like Negreanu and others. So yeah, I mean, it's still, while he made more of the bigger equity decisions, I contributed in time and gave, I don't know. It's one of those, like, a lot of people are like, oh, but you only won half a race. It's like, sure, whatever. I like contributed as much as I could.
I think it's more special. I think it's more unique. It's also stressful.
I love it,
right? Because like you're in, out, you don't want to blow it for your teammate.
Right, exactly. Like, particularly when I got tagged in at the FT and then, we played four-handed or whatever, and I get that Ice King, and I'm just like, oh man, this is going to be a big head. Oh, please don't blow it. And then like I end up having to cool down. Like the guy check raises when I see that, and then I have to cool down with ace high, and correct, but it was just like, oh, okay, you come back. This is,
you don't, because it's kind of a joke, right? When you do it at first, you get in, it's like, it's like whatever. It's a tag team. It's like, who knows? Maybe because you can't even control your partner, may just not be into it or whatever. Like they might just be over it or early on. So to actually get deep, and then when it's in reach, I think it gets so serious. It's so exciting. So
and then the funny thing as well is that we had like said beforehand, we're like, you know what? Because obviously we have Raising for Effective Giving, reg, where we fundraise for various charities. We had even said beforehand, you're like, oh, if we play it, the two of us, should we just, what is it? Like it's a 10K buy-in. Let's like make a donation here by giving away 50% of whatever we cash. Most of the time we're not going to cash. It's like, 5K, equity, fine. And then we win the whole thing. It's like, that is a big check to come.
Really, do your part for the charity. No one's gonna say you're not participating. That's something we've got to spend some time to. I'm telling you, Liv, it's late. You might have to grab a pot of coffee because we haven't started. We got
my sparkling water. All right. All right.
What is it? What would it mean to you? Because the Triple Crown in poker, like we were talking about, there's three major series. The WPT is the other one, and being UK based, or European based, WPT is World Poker Tour, although it's heavily distributed in the US, North America. What would that mean to you to win the Triple Crown? I don't know if as maybe one woman done it, or is none. I don't know if any women have done it.
No woman's done it, but I mean, obviously I would love it because I'm a title chaser. Let's be real here.
Who isn't? If you're lying, if you don't feel like you don't want.
There's a lot of players who genuinely aren't. They play for the cash game players. They love the game for its purity in and of itself. But I am a title chaser. Definitely, I enjoy it. And so much, and I think it's a great way of getting the inspiration and love for the game anyway. So I would absolutely love to. And it'd be a handy thing, I'm sure, for the resume in some way. And I would love it to be obviously a live tournament because I don't know, there's something about holding up the trophy physically and looking, being at that physical final table. But online's great too. It's the same game.
Very good. You're putting it on a tee for me, Lee, because Liv, I said Lee. I don't know. I said that. They're putting on a tee. We have got, what we got? The 100 million WPT online starting on Party Poker. Got to throw it up. That's Party Poker is a pretty strong site. One of the greats. You are a free agent or you're semi-retired, but that is online. Have you looked at that schedule? Are you going to be? Are you Fedor retired? Are you really retired? Are you kind of retired? And will you play some of these online? I mean, to be able to get from the comfort of your home, the Triple Crown potentially and legitimately with with that WPT, because they are awarding championship TOC seats and there's no events. Will you be participating?
I will. Yeah, I'm actually very excited to play. I haven't, as I said, played in forever. So yeah, I'm gonna be playing that. I don't know which ones I'm gonna play yet, but certainly some of the sort of bigger Saturday events, because it's a really sick schedule. I just checked it out this week.
It's long. It's long. It's 6 weeks. It's 100 million guaranteed. They got a lot of 3Ks, 10K. I think there's PLO. I don't know what they count as the main, but there's a 10K, the 3K. And I would imagine if for you, it's probably much more fun when you're not like because some people are going to be burnt out. They've been playing for 2, 3, 4 months every day, or, a lot. For you, it's like, all right, I could get a Triple Crown. I love poker, but I haven't been playing that much. And it's like, I've taken a break, and it's probably I would imagine very enjoyable and refreshing almost to come back. It wouldn't shock me if you just come in and rip one off right away. That's I mean,
I have to say the way my sort of story has gone, I wouldn't be that surprised either. I'd probably feel a little guilty, honestly, if I got that run good. But it would be incredible. And so yeah, it's going to be a fun return to poker because it's been a long time. And the only thing I'm concerned about is that I'm rusty. I do need to knuckle down and like study the solvers a little bit because I am definitely very rusty. And people are really good these days. They just are. I mean, to be fair, like this series Party Poker putting on is going to be very big. So hopefully there's going to be a lot of more amateur players playing. But yeah, I need to do some revision.
They're not giving them away out there for sure.
They're not giving it away anymore. No.
But the part of that though too is I think if you're playing less tables, like I know what I want to do is just focus on those events, because like sometimes I feel like you get in a schedule, or when you were playing for a living, or at least myself, like sometimes you get in there, it's like, oh, I'm gonna play 6-8 tables, like hopefully do well and whatever. But like these are strong and powerful enough where I just feel like, all right, I'll play 1, maybe 2 tables and really focus and maybe just lock in, because again, for you having that Triple Crown, it is definitely, there's something about that would be very special, and it's cool to have that opportunity. It's gotta be fun to get a Triple Crown so hard, to get the first, second, but then like with the third one's just there, right? It's like you could literally string together a couple days of run good, play good, and chalk it off the list. So we'll be watching, we'll be sweating. Hopefully what about Twitch? I think you have done some in the past. Would you stream anything? Are you gonna maybe like any kind of live type of stuff you might do with that? Can people watch you play poker, Liv? Come on.
I mean, they can watch me online. I don't know. I might. The thing is that when I've played, even when I was playing, regularly and full time, and I was actually, on top of my game, I found streaming and playing so hard, because it's just like, I want to entertain the streamers. So I want to be talking and telling jokes, or thinking about something, getting them to ask me questions about the universe and so on. And it just takes too much cognitive power away from them playing. And particularly if I'm playing like WPTs, they're tough, I need to be thinking. So but I actually might, I don't know. I never say never. It's something worth considering. I haven't logged into Twitch in forever, but it is fun.
I see people dropping on here. It's not me saying it. They're saying you'd be a great party poker ambassador on the screen. I gotta agree. We're just, hey, they're just tossing stuff out there, whatever. Who knows? But I'd say a winning formula would be, I believe, 1 table, the big WPT, whatever event that is, going during this time period, and then you can really focus on the chat. You can talk about your YouTube and all that stuff. So I think that would be. I just feel like 1 table Liv in a WPT for a Triple Crown. It just feels right. I'm just saying. So we'll see what happens. But speaking of YouTube, let's segue in there, because you're one of those, I have no structure for this podcast, because I can think of one thing and we could talk for a long time. Like you got a lot of things we can talk about. So I'm just going to pop over randomly here to YouTube. So you got your YouTube channel. I've watched several of these. I think the super interesting was this, I watched this, actually, I was just rewatching it a bit, but you did this a while ago. I remember watching this at the time, and I thought it was super fascinating about the sort of
nuclear
like war threat and that
game theory of it.
Yeah, you cover a bunch of very interesting sort of random topic concepts.
There's a lot of random shit
there. But every one I'm like, you know what, that's really interesting. I wonder what's going on here, and I would like to hear what you say. So give me a bit about what this channel is, what do you do, and how did this come about?
Sure. So, I mean, a lot of the older videos are just sort of things that I had recorded ages ago that stuck up there randomly. But I made the conscious decision to start pushing my channel and building it about a year ago. And my initial plan, and to be honest, it still is kind of my plan, is to just make videos on topics that I personally find interesting, because it's, I don't want to pigeonhole it too much. Originally I was like, oh, I'll just do physics, but it's like, no, there's so much interesting stuff, other philosophy and science concepts outside of that. So honestly, it's mostly just gravitating towards whatever I find interesting. A lot of it is to do with like futurism and how to make sure that the world sort of makes it through this century and has a flourishing future. Hence the nuclear war one. I think it was, I think it's a really important topic that no one's thinking about enough. And similarly, like the long form interviews I've done, particularly like the one with the guy on the future of humanity, Anders Sandberg, who's just like this brilliant philosopher, sort of mega genius, transhumanist type guy, who's like thinking about just like, how big could our civilization be if we do things right, and like what are the sort of physical and social limits, you know, if we do manage to take to the stars, how would it look, how long would it take us to you know, settle the entire Milky Way, could we ever do it? And like he's actually doing the like mathematical calculations behind the ways we could do it, which is more than just like posturing. So yeah, but what I did find, like the common theme that keeps coming out of my videos, and this was not an intentional thing, was that they all actually come down to like things that are very counterintuitive. So like the one I just made, which is just like this random space fact I was thinking about, like volume, the Earth's volume, you know, the Earth is how, you know, it's like 6,000 kilometers radius, like how, so it's a sphere of a radius of that size. So if you cut it into 1 meter cubes and lay them out in a long line, how far does it stretch? And then I like realized it's so much further than your intuitions would ever think. It stretches across the entire Milky Way. And it just like blew my mind so much that I had to make a video on it. And looking back at it, all the videos like I've made in the past year have been about like stuff that my intuition thought was one thing, and in reality it was actually my intuitions were wrong. And it's just like a really, to me, that's usually a tick box of when something is really interesting, because it makes you go, huh. So that's seemingly where the channel goes. It's like counterintuitive, weird thought experiment phenomena.
And so what's the ultimate goal of the YouTube channel? Is it something for you, like, because well, I want to ask you, but for me, like when I do a YouTube channel, and it's like kind of like some are highlights, some are going to cool places. Like even here, I can look and sort of, you know, the time blends together. If nothing else with poker, I feel like WSOP and all the stops, there's a lot of the same stops, right? World Poker Tour in this spot, or EPT, this stop, that stop, right? Like they all sort of blend together. So having videos, to me, it's like a journal in a way. It's like, oh, like I remember that was kind of cool. You know, I was here in that time, or I learned to fly, which is, that looked pretty scary. You're just flicking buttons and the guy's like, oh, do that. Don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, these are like random old video blogs, basically.
But I'm saying it's like kind of fun because it's like a journal. But for you, is it fun? Is it a passion project? Do you want to have, would you like to be a reporter? Would you like to do, is there any like, what is your ultimate goal of the channel, or what are you hoping to get out of it?
My ultimate goal is to build up a fan base of people who like to have their intuitions questioned, you know, like to, you know, have their instincts sort of messed with a little bit. But more than that, people who are just like incredibly curious and interested in, you know, these big picture questions about how can we make the Earth the best place it can be, and beyond. And you know, are people who are sort of interested in upgrading their thinking and becoming, you know, as rational as possible, and who enjoy just like, yeah, having like just really weird, curious topics. That's a goal. Like, I don't have any set thing like, oh, I want to appear, you know, I mean, I definitely have like instrumental goals as well, like they'll come from it. Like it'd be cool if I end up having like a spin-off TV show. You know, if this is a way to showcase that I can write. It's, and also partially it's like I'm doing it kind of as a learning process, because I've never written, you know, I'm learning how I edit them all myself, pretty much. I'm doing all the graphics largely myself, and so I'm trying to just learn everything, not just like about the presenting, but also how to like produce a piece of content from like start to finish. And it's also like a form of artistic expression, because actually I used to be really into art when I was a kid, and then I just like stopped, and my everything about science. And this is a nice way to actually bring some artistic expression back into the science stuff that I hadn't done. And I mean, and even poker, to be honest, I mean, yeah, there's some artistic flair you can use in poker, but it's still ultimately a science kind of. And whereas for this is just like, there's like intangibility of like stuff that I can't just like objectively measure. Like, and I'm like, oh, I just have a feeling that this is the style that will work when talking about nuclear war. And it's quite a sort of liberating
I want to
thought process.
I want to ask about this video specifically that sort of in your recent ones kind of caught, you know, it got a lot of views and it was a very interesting video. That like Petrov, you mentioned there, like this guy apparently saved 250 million lives potentially, or even 2 billion if he had hit the flight. Like how close do you feel, you know, when you really look at the list, it's like there's 11 times documented. It's sort of like when you hear about crazy scandals or things like that. Think about all the stuff and weird shit that happens that you don't know about. So like maybe there's 40 times or 100 times like where there was a chance it could happen. Like even now, look at like Trump and look at what's going on. Or, you know, like what worries me is like a leader, if someone gets so tilted, or like an older leader that's so like such an like could literally just like lose it and be like, you know, fuck everyone, and I'm old and they diagnosed me of, you know, some terminal illness, and like, you know, you're gonna die, and you're just like a real, you know, whatever, and you're like F everyone, like something like that. But like how legitimately, what % chance do you feel based on that research and sort of seeing these things, do you think that was like there was literally a switch goes, like what do you think the actual % chance was, like just off a whim, like in all these cases?
Yeah, so if we assume that there was like 11 near misses, then of course the question is like, well, what defines a near miss, right?
Were those one in 100 or 10%?
Exactly.
I mean, there's no way one was 50-50, but it sounds like it
seems, I almost certainly they were not 50-50, because that'd be like, you know, under 1% chance that we would still be here. So you've got to assume that realistically they were probably 2 to 5%. But the thing is that, or less. But even if it's just a 1% chance of like full-blown nuclear war, which would, let's say, wipe out half or even more of the world's population. I mean, in theory, it could actually wipe out the entirety of the world's population, which is an even bigger tragedy than if it wiped out 99%, because it means that like that's the end of consciousness in the entire universe, quite possibly. You know, like, sure, there might be aliens, but we don't know that. And it would be like a tragedy on like orders of magnitude bigger scale than even if it wiped out 99%. And obviously 99% would be one of the most horrifying things imaginable anyway. So yeah, so if it's like 1% even, then that's, what is that? That's you know, 70 million people on expectation each time that this like scenario runs. That's the cost of like actual on expectation lives every time like one of these near misses happens. And you know, in reality, probably some of them are like 1 in 1,000, and some of them were 1 in 3. You know, it's really hard to quantify it. And there are people who have, you know, there are like, that's what Future of Humanity Institute do, and various other of these organizations are like hiring like top statisticians who could have been like you know, like Jungle Man type, you know, players probably, because they're like that good at stats, but they're focusing on this stuff to try and quantify these risks. And yeah, as you said, like one of the main reasons I made this video is because I was like, well, just because, you know, yes, it's some evidence that we've made it through all these near misses, that maybe there's, you know, things are a little bit more robust, our systems are more robust than we realize. But at the same time, we have more countries now that are nuclear powers than have ever been in the past, you know? So before, it was like a more simple game theory problem when it was just Russia and the US.
Right.
That's like kind of easier to like keep this mutually assured destruction deterrence model. So it's like it's like a Nash equilibrium, right? It's like it's like a shitty, dark game theory optimal, well, no, suboptimal, but Nash equilibrium. But the moment you start adding more and more players, then that becomes more and more precarious. And I mean, that's what we're seeing. And that's why it's so important that we elect leaders who understand A, game theory to an extent, and B, like how probabilities compound if you run scenarios enough, and C, understand like, you know, try and think about creative ways to create, you know, more cooperation and like more disarmament, basically. And, you know, appreciate why treaties are so important, and think of creative ways of like ensuring people listen to them. So, you know, and that's kind of like the opposite of what we've been seeing in many different countries. They've not been electing the type of people who have the right kind of sort of, you know, game theoretic mentality in order to like not run, you know, put the world at risk.
Yeah, I saw that. I really like the analogy towards the end where you're talking about, you know, it's either like keep spending more and more money, building bigger, you know, more nukes that are going to likely could end the world with a couple clicks of a button, or take chips off the table and like say, all right, we're going to take this down and make the stakes less severe and whatnot. But yeah, so that's interesting. I do want to hit the coronavirus thing here. I haven't seen this video yet, but I do see the top 7 worst coronavirus arguments. Where do you kind of stand again? This is like, we've been in coronavirus world now for a while. It seems like it's flaring up again. Nothing really, you know, which seemed obvious, right? That it wasn't fixed, just sort of turned everything back on and whatever. It's a bit of a mess. in my opinion. What's your stance? And also, are you driving with the mask on or walking? Like, are you wearing masks? Are you taking it super seriously? Or are you kind of like, this is effed? And where do you stand on that? And how is it in your area particularly?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I think that was a pretty good summary of it. Where it's a pretty fucked up situation. Sorry, pretty effed up situation. You can bleep that if you want.
No, we're live. Everything goes here, Liv. Whatever you do, we're
okay, fine. Yeah. Everyone's adults. I'm sure they can handle it. You know, so obviously in many ways, it's just an awful situation because what it's showcased is how badly prepared the whole world, but certainly, I mean, especially, you know, rich Western countries who really have no excuse not to have been prepared for this, have, you know, just have not been, whether, you know, lack of protective equipment, shortages, like lack of even like a reasonable plan, lack of just like there was so much opportunity. Like I was worried about this in January. Now I got a head start because I actually had to go to China to give a talk. So like I was kind of aware of it more, but I was like, this is going to be a problem. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, Igor and I flew back from the States in February and we wore masks then before, like, and we got everyone was staring at us like we were absolute lunatics.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's how, to be fair, that's how when I've seen, you know, in general, I see a lot of people, you see people in Asia kind of wearing it as like a default. Like, I think that's what's going to be happening now for a long time everywhere. But it's like, that's what I was kind of in my head. I'm like, man, like, it's kind of weird. I mean, like, that's silly, you know?
I mean, there was like bunches of different, like, you know, systemic failures. I mean, it's easy to like blame a lot of it on Trump. I mean, Trump's done a lot of bad stuff, but like the World Health Organization, they handled it appallingly,
right? Yeah,
so badly. Like they, for whatever reasons, I have my personal suspicions because it's like they just wanted to not upset China, but they didn't sound the alarm, even though they had all the information. It was like blaringly obvious to like anyone who's actually following it closely and like thought about statistics and the nature of exponential growth that this was going to become a big problem, and it was not going to be contained. Mm-hmm. And like they just didn't sound the alarm soon enough, and then they didn't, you know, make simple recommendations about masks when it was like, so again, like you need to just look. You could see when like South Korea are getting it under control. Why not just pick up the phone and be like, hey, could you guys just tell us what you did so we can copy that? And instead, you know, the UK was just as bad, like didn't pay attention and be like, okay, look, this is what they're doing. They're not idiots. They're not going to shut down their economy for nothing. So maybe we should copy this. But all that aside, like in terms of how I'm personally approaching it, like, you know, we're people of our age, we're young, we're fit and healthy. The risk of death to us is extremely low. And I mean, by that, it's like, probably like 1 in 1,000, you know, 1 in 500, 1 in 1,000, maybe even higher actually. It might be like 1 in 10,000 if you caught it, which, so, you know, that's not that bad. But what's more the reason why I'm being still like, I'm taking pretty much maximum precautions to avoid getting it is because we don't know what the long-term effects of, you know, if you have a like moderate to severe case, there's evidence that it can cause like severe lung damage, you know, or some kind of permanent lung damage, brain damage, like all this sort of stuff. So, you know, I'm taking the sort of approach that I think we're all likely to get it at some point, but I would much rather get it in like a year's time when the medical community around. Well, it's not about there's more in whether there's a vaccine or no, but like the medical community has had more time to figure out the best ways of treating it. You know, so that to me, it's kind of just like a stalling technique. But at the same time, like I appreciate I'm speaking very much from a position of luxury here because I happen to have like a job and a lifestyle that enables me to do that. There are so many people who just cannot do that. And I have like, it's heartbreaking to think about like the awful decisions that people are having to make where they're like, they'll either lose their jobs or go out and put themselves at risk or their families at risk. It's so brutal. And I wish it was a question I had an answer to. Like if the world did, we would have fixed it. But you know, I'm extremely concerned about the economy. I think it's, you know, the employment rates are going through the roof, and I don't see how this doesn't end up in some kind of depression. without some kind of magic.
And the U.S. is printing money, and like the stocks are, you know, shooting up a lot of places, and it's just bizarre. And stuff's like going to close back down. And we live in it's a bizarre time. You know, there's the racial movements in the U.S. in particular. There's just a lot of happening at once. The elections are right now. I mean, it's just like I'm not familiar so much with the UK. I know Brexit was a bit messy. Or what, I don't even know what's happening with that. And I guess Boris, he got coronavirus, and I don't know how it's being handled. Like, is he getting crushed for how it's been handled? Or are people sort of
yeah, and I mean partially deservingly so. Without getting into the like nitty gritty of it, but basically they just had like in the beginning they had a bad plan, and then some very good scientists basically showed them, look, this is a terrible idea. This is what's going to happen if you do that. And to the credit of the government, they immediately, upon that information, changed tactic entirely. The issue is that tactic just came a little late. And that meant that a bunch more people died than needed to. But I mean, I couldn't think of anything worse than being like, you know, a well-intended politician right now, because you just can't win. You're going to piss, whatever you do, you're going to piss someone off. You're either going to piss off the people who think that you're not taking it seriously enough, like that no deaths are acceptable, or you're going to piss off the people who think it doesn't exist or it's overblown. And I mean, and the other difficult thing is as well, it's like I'm personally like constantly in a state of like uncertainty, because while I would bet, if I had to bet money, I would bet money on the side that the virus is as big of a problem as the majority of like scientists and people say. There's still a chance that it has been overblown in certain ways, or like it's misunderstood, or the fatality
statistics are crazy too, right? Because like how many deaths there are versus how many cases, and like even I think there was like 59,000 cases in the U.S. the other day, but it's like now there's so much more testing. Also, a lot of people aren't getting tested. There's people that don't show signs that won't even get tested. So it's like these numbers are just like it's really hard to interpret the data. Like there's not
exactly. It's
false
you know
tests,
you need to be a professional statistician to try and on that I made a video on the false positives, false negatives rate thing, because it's a really.
Which one's that? I want to watch that. Where's that?
It's the sensitivity, specificity, and the third one, that one. Yeah.
Right.
It's so difficult to. You know, like the information landscape right now is an absolute mess, and there's just never before has there been so much information available for us to look at, and so you know everybody has a strong opinion, and it's so hard to know which opinions are valid, and then on top of that, there's like willful misinformation being put out. There's not only people who are like well intended but saying the wrong thing.
If you're a Democrat, Republican, or like these issues in religion, like you feel strongly one way or the other, kind of, right? And then it's sort of it's very complex, and there's people take strong stance, and
I mean with basically everything, more and more I'm just moving into this like ambivalence of like, I don't know what the truth is, I don't know what reality is. I'm going to give things probabilities. I'm not going to like anyone who's like, oh, is this definitely caused by, you know, Trump did this, or this is 100% caused by that. Like, if anyone is making these strong statements, I just discount them as being a fool, because no one really knows. But that doesn't mean that you can't still give things probability distributions and give things like greater likelihoods or not. You know, like I still think it's most likely that the mainstream opinion from scientists that it came from like bats. Naturally occurring, I think is most likely, but there's still a chance, and I would give it like 20% that it was some kind of at least human, partially, man-made thing. We don't know. The point is that
because this to me is almost more scary. Like you talk about nuclear war and like technology now, and different countries having capabilities and whatnot. Like the fact that, like, to me, this is so scary, because whether it was bad or human created, if you really look at how this goes, like if you had ill will and you were a group, some kind of bad group, or wanted to really cause havoc, this seems like such a difficult thing to control or do, because like if you could come up with a virus, it doesn't take much. You transfer it over in a little jar, you do whatever, bring it over, spread it, get it in areas like, you know, like they could have much worse effects, right? Like this virus is so scary too, because okay, it affects old people, more sickly people, but what if it affected babies? What if it affected, you know, the parameters of just whatever? Like it could, what if you come up with a virus that's like deadly to infant, you know, like who knows what it could be, or mutate and whatnot. And like, what if someone could make, you know, and they like start thinking, well, yeah, we can't do this, but what if we do this? And there's no way to detect it or stop it, or you could really spread. So like that type of stuff seems very scary to me as well. I mean, I'm sure you've thought, like you seem to think about a lot of theories and stuff, and like stuff that to me is very, it seems.
And I think you're right. You're absolutely right to be very concerned about that. So that is one of a number of growing sort of globally potentially catastrophic risks that would be human created and are a result of like emerging technology, basically. Because as you said, like in some ways COVID is not that bad, because while it's extremely infectious, the fatality rate is fortunately, you know, comparatively low to say something like SARS or MERS. You know, its fatality rate is going to be under 1%, probably somewhere around 0.5%, I would guess. Whereas, you know, if it had a fatality rate of 20%, 30%, which a genetically engineered, or, you know, an artificially created virus with that intent to kill the most people could easily have, I mean, it's just like a catastrophe of orders of magnitude bigger. And you're absolutely right that like technology to make these things will become cheaper and easier to do, and therefore more ubiquitous. And it's a problem that unfortunately very few people are actually thinking and talking about. There are people who are working on it. Like a good friend of mine, her entire job, she's a researcher at the University of Oxford. Her entire job is looking into like the risks of potentially man-made pandemics. But it's you know, it's a very dark job, because it's her job to like think about these horrible scenarios and try and think of ways to prevent them.
It's kind of catch-22 too, right? It's like you want to talk, like people maybe they're thinking about it, but don't really want to talk about it. You don't really want to like bring attention to it.
Give any ideas? I even feel weird talking about it on this, honestly. But I think it's fine. But yes, like this idea of information hazards is a very real thing. And that's one of the things, like one of our main goals with Reg was to like raise awareness of this kind of stuff and be like, there are people who, you know, because poker players get it. Like poker players have seen what else has happened, you know? Like most people, when they hear it's like, oh, it's a 2% chance, well, that's fine. It's like, yeah, but poker players like, yeah, but 2% happens 2% of the time. And when it does, it really sucks.
Right.
And so, it's unfortunately just still a like remarkably neglected area, especially when you can compare to like other things. You know, there are so many worthy causes in the world that we've been, you know, seeing, you know, police brutality, horrifying, very, very bad, needs to be fixed. But is it as big of a problem as a potential man-made pandemic being released that kills half the world's population within the next 5 years, which is a potential risk? It's not a huge risk, but if you extrapolate that over 5, 10, 20 years, now the risk gets much, much bigger. You know, like, and the fact that this gets like a fraction of the funding that, say, current sort of movements that, you know, political movements that are going on, you know, outrage that people are understandably upset about, is to me the biggest tragedy of all, because it's like, while our attention, you know, people have limited attention spans, people have limited outrage, and people have limited money with which they can donate and try and fix things. And if everybody is focusing on a comparatively much smaller issue to this big thing that's just like sitting here, and because it's like kind of creepy or like not emotional, you know, you can't see anyone dying of this non-existent virus yet. People don't think that they need to do anything about it, but that's insanity to me.
Right.
So
well, it's also, you talk about virus, you talk about these other things. I mean, at some point, you know, the world's amazing, life's amazing. I think we're in the Matrix anyway. That's a whole nother topic. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But like, it's just like, it is kind of wild. There's so many different things that are, you know, as the world gets more technology and like more information and more possibilities, everything just sort of seems to get magnified, right? There's more, like, it doesn't take much. There's 8 billion people almost or whatnot. And it's like, you know, the right people, the wrong people have the right things or the wrong intention or wrong motive. And Yeah, I don't live. I'm happy we talk about it. I'm happy we spoke about the, your YouTube channel, but alone, like we can literally do probably on each of these topics, an hour bit or two. So you guys got to check out her YouTube channel and more content. Looks like you're pretty consistent. You've been putting out some stuff now, and firing up, and I know I like it. It's very interesting, and I'm glad to see you doing that.
Subscribe.
We got yes, subscribe. Hit that. Hit that button. Get in there. We have even the reg charity. I do want to talk about that. Then I want to take some questions because we're already late. It's late where you are. It is very late, and there's a lot of questions.
Fine, actually, I'm feeling perky. So it's
all right. Well, good. I'm not gonna quit you. So how about that? You're gonna have to. You got to send me some sort of signal when you're ready to start winding it down. But let's talk about reg charity, because I know you are one of the founding members, are very influential, impactful. You, Igor, Phil Gruesome. There's a ton of others I've given to this charity. I know you guys know what you're doing. There's been, you guys have raised a ridiculous amount of money and awareness. Tell me a little bit how this came to light, and what is reg to you? What does it really mean, and where is it at currently? Because I'll be honest, I'm not as informed, up to date speed on it, because usually it's very prevalent at live tournaments, people wearing patches. You see stuff, and like obviously the main event winner, Mr. Jacobson there, who won and gave a large number. You and Igor win a bracelet, give half. So these type of things you hear about, but on a day-to-day, is this something that's getting steam? Is there more and more people getting involved? Is the money coming in? Is it in a good state?
Yeah, so
30 questions, Liv. I'm gonna ask you 30 questions and then let you just go for it.
I'm just gonna answer yes to
it's good. Things are good.
So it started because we got introduced to some effective altruists. These are philosophy professors or researchers from who are in Switzerland, who just basically explained the concepts I just explained to you about, like, we need more probabilistic thinking, and almost more like just like a scientific mindset applied to philanthropy. And the vast majority of philanthropy is basically all done sort of from like emotion and like heart-based decisions, which, while nice, is not always the most optimal way when you're dealing with really complex topics of like how to decide which problems are worse than others. And we need more people like using science to figure this out. So they thought that poker players would understand these concepts better than like most communities, and suggested we try, create some kind of fundraising movement for the best rated charities. So that's all it really was. And then it just, like, the support was overwhelming, and over, it's now been 6 years actually since we founded it. It's raised a fuck ton. It's been really cool. Go on.
Explain to me about like the money break, because I think that's one of the biggest things is what the name, it's entailing the name, that the actual money goes to the causes. Because is that true that in a lot of these I don't know, United Way or big major charities, there's a lot of salaries, there's a lot of costs, like the actual, let's say you give $1, what percent makes it to charities? And is that one of the big principles here, that the money gets a vast majority gets donated? Could you maybe give me a little bit of an example of how this is versus others?
Yeah, so that's a metric. So what you're talking about is like the efficiency. So say, you donate $1,000 to charity A. What percentage of that is spent on, for example, salaries or marketing or the charity's offices, and what percent actually goes to whatever the intended recipient is, and it depends obviously what the charity does. So that's efficiency, but that's like only like part of the story, because what's actually more important is this idea of effectiveness. So if your goal is to save lives, let's say, and charity A saves if you gave $1,000 to it, it would save one life. Or actually, let's do $100,000. You gave it $100,000 to charity A, and that would save 10 lives. But charity B, if you gave $100,000 to, would only save one life. Then it seems pretty obvious you'd want to give to charity A. But if charity A was actually only, let's say, 10% efficient, where actually 90% of that money was spent on like necessary research or overheads and so on, but it still ends up saving 10 times as many lives as the other one, then that's actually a better thing. So that's why efficiency can be important. But what's the bigger question is how effective it is, how many lives it saves per dollar received. And so that's ultimately the more important metric. And so basically, like, that's what you're trying to figure out. It's like which charities save the most lives per donation received. If a charity is the most incredible, but has to by necessity hire some specific incredible researcher who demands a $500,000 salary, who cares? Like, if it ends up saving more lives than any other organization doing it, like, good, like, let that person be, receive a great salary. Now, as it happens for Reg takes 0%. Like, it's extremely cheap to run. Basically, there's like one guy who runs the website and helps the donors basically make sure they donate the money to the charities. So that was funded basically by us, and which was great because it meant that, like, we didn't ever have to be like, oh well, only 95% goes to the charities. No, 100% goes. And so that's how it works.
Very, very cool. So we saw here some of the, actually it's where's the team here? So you're on there. You and there's Igor. I think you were already dating maybe at the time, but I remember you guys been involved with this for a long time. And then Mr. Gruesome, of course. So it's a great team here. You got some people helping, some people that have been active, and there's so many others that have given in a big form or other ways. Is that something though that was the name? Like, how did you come? And the name's great. It's effectively raising the most effective. Like, how did that come up? Just sort of.
Well, because it's all about effectiveness. It's all about maximum bang for buck. The most good you can do per your dollar that you've given, and that's what it's about. It's like drawing upon all the best research to figure out what are the best places to give to. And like, that's actually a really hard question to answer, because there's the question of like, okay, there are some charities which we know will directly say, like Against Malaria Foundation will save one life on average for about $3,000, like just pretty much guaranteed. Or at least on expectation, it's very well established number. But then there's other possible things, like, for example, synthetic biology risk of, some manufactured pandemic. Now you're having to do with more like vague expected value calculation about, okay, so most of the time this isn't going to be a problem in the next 10 years, let's say. So 99% of the time there aren't any deaths, but 1% of the time, let's say, there's going to be 5 billion deaths. Well, you do that calculation, and actually it's actually much cheaper to save a life. Maybe like you'll be saving a life with $500, or something like that. So it's really hard to nail this down. And then it gets into like almost like philosophical questions of like, what do you value more, lives right now, or is a life in 5 years' time that's going to die less meaningful and less valuable than a life, right? 2 lives right now, or it's all about trade-offs basically. And that can ultimately, it comes down to, it's a very personal decision of like what your trade-off is that you would rather value. Some people value, animals. I mean, I think everyone likes animals and cares and doesn't want to see animals suffering. But for some people, they think a human life is worth 1,000 or 10,000 dogs, let's say, and for someone else it might be 1 billion, and so, but the point is that giving people this information enables them to at least make an informed decision. And that's the problem that we mostly have in philanthropy, is that people aren't even making informed decisions. They're just like, well, I don't know, I'll give there because they had the most upsetting commercial on TV.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. It really is. I know from my experience with you guys and hearing it and understanding it, what you guys do, and what you've done, it's really cool. It's great to see that it's doing well, and that's it's got to feel good too, because I think that's one of the things in poker that I can speak for myself, and I imagine you feel the same, and hence why you may be so involved with this charity. Is it's a zero-sum game, and would you say it's fair to make the argument that people say, oh, poker, it's like you're playing. I mean, so stocks are zero-sum, right? There's a lot of things that are competitive, or you're winning money or whatnot, or but go ahead.
Stocks aren't strictly zero sum, because there's usually value being made when you invest in companies. If you're investing, it's like if you're investing in like arms dealers, companies, then not so good. But like you're investing in like a good company that you believe is adding value to the world, then it's, even though you're like technically winning from someone else making a bad sale, there's additional value. So it's still a bit more positive sum. But yeah, you're right. Poker is like basically zero sum as it gets.
So in terms of poker, let's just take that example. Do you think it's fair? Because I think sometimes people I've heard people say, I struggle that if I play for a living, I'm not really giving anything back. I want to give something back. But in reality, how I look at it, and tell me where you come from this, is if you are able to make a living doing, say it's poker or whatever, you would be doing that. You could argue there's a lot of things that aren't directly really overall beneficial for the world or what you're providing. But if you're able to have time, effort, and do extra, and you're able to use your time, or like saying a reg, is that, would you say that's an argument that you could, if you're able to free up time and use your time effectively to give or do better for the world, is that a way of saying like I'm doing something good for the world, even though I played poker professionally? I mean, does that
I'm sorry, I did.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely one of many incentivizing factors for us to create it. I mean, at least for me, I can't speak for the others, but you know, I didn't want my gravestone to say she won a lot of 4-bet pots, and that would, you know, that'd be it. No, I want to add value to the world in some way. And I mean, I don't, you know, poker is probably all in all a slight net negative to the world, but it's really close because there's like many rationality lessons which are extremely valuable. And actually, thinking about it, the poker community, certainly over the last 10 years, has like done so much good. I mean, I appreciate I'm probably speaking from bias here because of like my belief of how impactful the money that's been raised through reg is. But like that is money purely that's come from the poker world that would not have come elsewhere. And it's so huge. So actually, yeah, no, I retract that original statement. I think poker has been net positive, but there's a lot of negatives that are associated with it that suboptimal. But there's like, you know, like as well, you can't just say it's purely zero sum because there's entertainment value that's created.
No, for sure. I mean, I don't agree with that. I'm saying that's a statement that, you know, you could support, I guess,
right.
You could argue it, but I don't think that's right. It's also, you know, people you've met,
it's
experiences you get, things you've been able to do or help in other ways. But so I'm curious on that. Now let's talk website, Liv. There's not many poker players. You are semi-retired or retired now, but you got a very nice website. I would say there's only a handful of poker players that have like a well put together, very nicely done, by the way. I don't know is this a.
I just had it rebuilt because my old one was a bit crap, and he's done a really good job. I'm very pleased with it.
When we finally locked in a podcast, you said I'm not going live without a good website. Well, you got it rebuilt. Yeah. It's very, very nice. What is do you feel, is it fair to say within poker, the community, do you think you're more organized, like more of like a business, more your head on because a lot of poker players are sort of fundamentally lazy as a stereotype, or just sort of one dimensional with poker? And again, not necessarily people we know or people that we associate with, because I feel like we know a lot of very motivated, driven people, but you know, for yourself, it's not normal. There's maybe like I'd say it's less than 0.25% of people that play professionally, or maybe 0.1 that have a website. What kind of got you into doing these other things? You speak with TED. Like where did your motivation and sort of drive come to build other things outside of poker when you're doing very well and successful within poker itself?
I mean, I don't know really.
You don't sit still. I mean, I don't put you as someone who's just like complacent. You like to like go to the next thing. You always seem like you're busy learning, growing, traveling, doing things. So where do you get that adventurous spirit from?
Good question. I don't know. I mean, I think it's just been largely part of my personality since quite a young age. But I mean, I was like pathologically competitive growing up. And especially like I just had to be the best at everything. I was like unbearably so. And you know, really to an unhealthy level. And I think that was one of the reasons I love poker so much, honestly, when I first got into it. I've become less like adversarial in my competitive outlets as I've gotten older, but it's still there. And I just think I just have I don't know. It's just something. It's just my personality type. I can't say there's like any events that have like made me. I just like.
What about brothers and sisters? Do you have brothers and sisters?
I grew up actually pretty much an only child. I have a half sister, but I didn't really know her growing up. And then I had step siblings like later on, but from like to the age of 12, I was effectively an only child. And I think maybe that had some kind of influence. I was like quite a loner because I lived in the middle of the country and had no, like there was no real other friends around. So I just was like, my friends were the animals. I lived on a farm with lots of animals, and like that was my entertainment. So I don't know.
Very, very interesting. Okay.
I don't think you can psychoanalyze that.
And let's look over here because I'm fascinated. I've been to TED. I see, here you've done speeches. I've seen you were doing a couple different ones, and I mean these are very TED's no joke. I've been to it. It's intense. It's exciting. It's a lot of the greatest leading minds and topics in the world. What was that like for you, who loves this stuff, physics and this type of stuff, and doing?
It was amazing.
What was this experience like?
It was incredible. I mean, I did the TEDx like 2-3 months before the main TED. I didn't know I was going to do the main TED. I found out, like, I got invited, fairly late. The TEDx was so terrifying because I made the decision to do that and had plenty of time to prepare, but I still just I couldn't decide what I was talking about literally until like 8 days before. And it was just one of the most stressful weeks of my life. Igor still hasn't forgiven me for it. Basically, I was just a nightmare of just complete meltdown.
It's like studying for a test. It's almost like procrastinating type, right? You know you want to do something, you're ready to do it, and then you just kind of don't know, and then you get there and you're ready and just crush it, but you're like, but about everything, the whole thing. You're thinking about stuff like, what if the mic goes out, or you're just like,
that's not what I was more worried about. Like, what if I just don't have anything to say? I forget what I want to say. I throw up on stage. Like, all of these possibilities were options. But I did not puke on stage, despite thinking I would, and got through it. So that was a TEDx. And I think the content of my TEDx is actually better than my TED. Because you just had more space and time, but I just went into more depth. But then the TED, the real big main stage TED thing was 3 months later. And so that was just more fun because I already knew that I could do it at this point, even though I knew it was actually much higher stakes. Because my main goal when I found out I was doing that, I was like, okay, I have to do it well enough so that they put it on the website. Because if they put it on the website, you can get millions of views. And I mean, the talk has had over 3 million views now. I can't believe it.
And when they invite you to TED, so you're saying it wasn't like they said, we want you to come talk about poker. They just said, come to TED, and then you figure out what you're talking about, or it wasn't a directed subject?
No, I mean, they asked me what I wanted to talk about, and I showed them. I think I showed them the TEDx, and they were like, "Oh, this is good stuff. We've never had anything like this before. So try and modify this." It was a specific format they were doing for my session, which was 6 minutes maximum, and it was self-advancing slides, so you couldn't have a clicker, so you had to time it perfectly. And honestly, it wasn't like giving a talk; it was more like giving some kind of state theater performance, where you just learn. You script it out, and you literally learn it word for word, and you rehearse it to the point that it's the words to Happy Birthday. So it wasn't I give talks now where it's just I'll have my notes and vague ideas of what I want to say and my slides and just freewheel it. But this was just a Shakespearean dialogue, basically. Had
you done any public speaking or coaching? I want to say I remember you getting some. Maybe I'm mixing this up, but I thought you did some sort of.
I did. I hired a coach I had to give a talk for 3-4 years prior at an event talking about reg, actually. And so Igor hired me a coach because I was having another meltdown. He said, let's just get you some professional help with this. And it was really helpful. The most successful talks typically are story driven as much as possible.
Right.
That would be my advice I'd give to anyone who's has to give a talk, is just break it up with stories as much as possible to insert some emotion and human element, whether it's a happy story, sad story, doesn't matter, just stories people love. And particularly if you're talking about something like poker, which is a bit dry often, throw the stories in and people love it. So that was helpful. And then I'd just given a few. I did this one at Oxford Union, which was I can't believe that's on the internet. And it's had 400,000 views. And it's one of my least favorite talks I did. It was going to
saying, oh, she spoke at Oxford. Look at it. People remember.
Yeah. I'm mortified. I can't watch it. Even though the content's actually pretty good, my delivery was so bad because I was just I hadn't prepared properly. And it was awkward. Is a long story. I mean, people can watch it, but put it this way: I like 5 minutes into the talk, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to stand up here for 45 minutes and do this. I might just pretend I'm having a heart attack so that this can end.
And that was before TED, or that was after?
Yeah, it's like 2 years before TED, or
okay. So now you're a pro. Liv, what's the rate? What do you do for there's Cameo, there's different things. What's your speaking rate? Or do you just enjoy speaking? Like would that be something that would be interesting to you? Would you do, like, if someone said, hey, come speak to our business, and like, does that, I mean, I don't really know that, so that would be something you'd be open to doing?
That is literally what I do at the moment. That's like what, at least I was before coronavirus. That was like my main source of income now is giving, like, I talks to cool. banks, insurance companies, basically corporate clients who are looking for like some kind of motivational keynote speaker. That's what I now do. Cool. Still get nervous. It's interesting. Like, I've now given like 20 or so of these, and like large, sort of the same material, and yet I still get nervous. And like, it's really interesting. Like, I just have some days I just like, I'm like in the zone and like fun and flowy and like having a conversation like this kind of, and then other times I'm almost like awkward and autistic and can't.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you just don't know. It's more about the audience. It's sort of like a comedian, if you have good stuff, or you can deliver, you like get up there and get in the rhythm. You just don't know if it's like going to click, or maybe like the group doesn't get it, or they just like, you could just sort of brick even though you're on, and like the energy's not right, and they're like, what are you talking about? Or it's like the most interesting thing. And that's something I find, when I if I'm at dinners or places and groups and I end up talking to people, I always like talking to other people, because I talk kind of for a living with either podcasts or Twitch, and I'm always talking, but I love listening to other people and kind of seeing what they're doing, or hear like what's going on in their life. But I find a lot of times, like, I would imagine for you especially, like, if you know, oh yeah, I play poker for a living, I've won millions of dollars in tournaments, like, people are fascinated by poker because or it's just so different. It's like not your typical, like, I'm a doctor, a lawyer, a real estate, but no, I played poker professionally and traveled the world and sponsored. It's like, what? Like, so, it ends up being sort of, you're the fascinating, you'll be in a group of successful people, and like, everyone wants to know, like, oh wait, really? Because like, when you say I'm a professional poker player, kind of, 97%, not taking anything away, listen, it's great, poker's amazing, but like, the majority of people aren't sponsored or traveled the world or played in the biggest tournaments, right? So it's kind of like, do you feel that way though? Do you feel like people, once they kind of talk to you and they're like, oh, that's like really like interesting?
I mean, the like social capital it's given me is insane. Like, I put it this way, I've managed, like, been able to meet and befriend people who I would never have dreamt of. Well, I dreamt of meeting, like, heroes, and they wanted to talk because of poker. Like, they were like, that's so interesting, tell me more.
It's crazy. It really is. Hey, what do you think about Branson, SpaceX, all this stuff? Are you like, because Branson is the UK guy, but I've heard, like, is he like a hero in UK, or people like, what's his like a perceived other, like, overall? Or is he like is because I've heard different things, but like, obviously he's he's a mogul. I mean, he's done Virgin and he's done huge shit. Like,
he doesn't have he's not that particularly loved in the UK, because he's like, I mean, he doesn't live here. He's he moved to the Virgin Islands, and I mean, I met him a couple of times. I thought he was really lovely.
Me too.
Really,
I think the same.
Hearted, right, and so I don't know, but at the same time, like, I get it. Like, when you see someone like living on a private island, it's people find it upsetting and grotesque, and I totally understand. But I think he's definitely been. I think he's a net positive force for the world. He's.
Well, I'm asking about him specifically more with the space program too, right? He's doing some like.
He's doing Virgin Galactic. I haven't been following them that closely. I mean,
go into space. If you could go on that ride, would you do it?
Fuck yes, as long as I know it's above a certain threshold of safety. Yeah, like,
that shocks me. You couldn't pay me all the money in the world to do it. I guess that's just no, I wouldn't. If you told me he's doing the ultimate advertisement, though. I believe he is, or he's putting like his entire family on the first flight or something, which is like a pretty bold statement. I believe, if I heard that right, like, kind of like, all right,
I mean, I'm not that confident that Virgin Galactic specifically will be doing space flight within even the next 5 years. I don't know. They seem to be sort of held up with just more and more problems. But whereas like, obviously something like SpaceX has provably been extremely successful. And and is, has now sent people, but they're like a different, Sponge and Galactic are trying to do sort of space tourism, and it's like only barely going into space, like
right.
It's not even really a rocket. It's more like a plane that goes up like very, very high. And
like flying into Antarctica for a day just to cross off. Oh, I've been to all the continents. But you're sort of like doing.
I mean, I wouldn't want to go for just a day. I would like to go and spend like a week on Antarctica.
Yeah. No, you know what I'm saying though. It's almost like check it off the bucket list. Like, at some point, it's like, oh yeah, I've been in space, and like, it's kind of gangster.
I mean, I just want to. You should read the accounts, the first-hand accounts that astronauts have of like the like beyond. I'm not a religious person, right? But the spiritual experience, the peak unifying universal spiritual experience, whatever you want to call it, godlike religious experience that people have, they say, when they see the Earth from space for the first time, just like better than any trip, any peak experience you might have at Burning Man. It's just like nothing on Earth, literally. And I want that very badly. So
yeah, it's funny because Antonio, we were there last year for Bill's 50th birthday, and he, was on his thing, and he was there, and I have a video of it, and Antonio posted on his Instagram. But it was Richard. He was like doing a magic trick, and he was literally, Antonio finished the trick, and he said he said there's no way, and he was gonna give him a trip into space. He said if that's the card or whatever, right? Like I actually had not seen magic, or I mean, obviously it's not like he's not doing like crazy trick, but like he did something. He was going to give him a trip into space, he said, if he had waited another second or two. And Antonio wanted to go so bad, he was so tilted. It was expensive. It's like $250K or something.
And it's $250K you have to give now with
unknown, and maybe if it go or work for you. So anyway, I'm curious. All right, that's good to know. So you're ready to go. You're skydiving. I'm sure you've done it, and you're flying planes. No, we were meant to go skydiving years ago, and then it got cancelled because it got too windy, and then we just. I would have bet a lot you would skydive. All right, fair enough. Maybe you should do that before you fly into space, but we'll one thing at a time. What? Tell me what Burning Man is for you. We can't not do a podcast and talk about Burning Man. Was your first year the same year we went? Was it 2014?
So yeah, 2014. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty electric. What are you missed a year or two, I believe, or where do you fall in the Burning Man? What would you?
Been every single year, but we were in a different camp this past year.
Okay, so you've been. So this is now COVID, and it's not going on right now. But like, what is that experience? Give a few words about Burning Man for those that don't know what that is. How highly would you recommend that on bucket list, or just something that would you recommend to everyone, pretty much, or?
I mean, not everybody. I don't think it fits for everyone's personality, but like 90% of people, or I don't know, certainly 90% of people I know, I would recommend it as like a straight up 10 out of 10 for them to go, and it's like a must experience. It's just like, again, it's the closest thing to a spiritual offering that one could, even like a staunch atheist could, I don't believe in magic, but Burning Man has magic. There's this like something, there's this really something intangible, like that you can't. It's really hard to describe, but I got a friend of mine to go who was very resistant, and the way I got him there, he's like he's a technologist, and he's trying to like build some, trying to help make the world a better place. And I was like, the reason why it's so important for you to go is because it's the closest thing to utopia I've ever seen, and it's like the closest. I think it's the closest example of a utopia that we would want to build at some point. It's right. Like a post-scarcity environment where humans are free to actually live out their best selves, and you get to see like the best side of human nature that I've seen anyway. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
I heard there's a rumor. Well, no, not a rumor. I've heard that there's a city being built, like I'm gonna blow it, somewhere in South America, like maybe Panama or some like Burning Man. It might even be Guy who's doing it, or they're building like a Burning Man city, like to live full time or something cool like that. I heard it recently from someone credible.
I know what it is.
I can't even. I should need to. I honestly don't even know who told me. I don't even know what day it is. Honestly, I don't know what day it is right now, Liv. I might not. I'm just.
It's Groundhog Day, at least for me. It's like actual Groundhog Day every day. This is so nice. It's like, oh, like a new face, a new conversation.
Yeah, right. I forget how to socialize a little bit for sure. I will just, I want to point out this was 2014 Burning Man. This is where I met my now wife Amelia actually on the playa. I remember you.
I remember.
Yeah, I met.
You came up to us and you were like, "Guys, I just met my wife, my future wife." I'm like, "What?" Okay, all right, Jeff. I'm sure she's great. I'm sure you'll be together forever. And he's like, "No, you don't understand. Like, I actually did." Like, and then, no, you're right.
Yeah, here it is. We got a 14-month-old son to prove it. Little Burning Man baby. So anyway, yeah, love happens. Playa love's real. I do want to ask you quickly before we're gonna have to go into questions, Liv. I can't. Even though we could, unless you fire up a pot of coffee, I'm not keeping you till 4 a.m. I mean, it could get insane because we got like 100 questions. We'll try to take one. The last thing I want to cover.
Jake Abdallah has asked a very important question. You have to ask that one.
Who is that?
Jake Abdallah.
Oh, in the Twitter.
Yeah, no, in the chats here on the
What is it? What's his name?
I don't even know what this is. Jake Abdallah. Where is it?
I don't see it. Is it in the chat? One of the questions on
it's in the chat here on the stream.
Physics?
Not on YouTube. Where is it?
Was it up? His name's Jake in the chat. Oh, there it is.
Horse-sized duck or 100-sized duck horses? 100 duck-sized horses.
100 duck-sized horses.
That's very. Oh, as pets. Oh, I thought the question was whether fighting, which would win. 100 duck-sized horses. Yeah.
Wow. Jake, this seems like a complex question. It seems very deep. I'm trying to. That just tripped me out. I was trying to think about it. I don't know.
Jake is one of my favorite follows on Twitter, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Within the poker community, yeah. Recommend.
Awesome. Well, hello, Jake. That's you got called out there for a specific question. I'm gonna think about that question later. I'm not even sure. It seems like it's powerful. I don't trying to visualize what that means, but it's. We got a lot of questions. We want to save time. I do want to ask you about children and relationships. So you and Igor, 6 years. Would you like to have kids? Is that something like? Because I remember very vividly. I remember in the Bahamas at a private game years ago. And before I had a baby or anything, we were talking, maybe we were like, oh, we were talking about babies. And you're like, I think, I don't want to take words out of your mouth, but you're kind of like saying roughly like, we haven't really, this time of the world, it's crazy. And this was like, world is fairly normal in my opinion at this time. And it's gotten even more wild, but do you have what do you think about the possibility of being a mother one day? Is that something you'd like to be? Do you think you will be?
So my probability is of Igor and my probability of having kids is going up with time, despite the fact that the world is getting crazier, and I can't say I'm especially optimistic. Still think it's a I had this like weird, almost like anti-natalist type of, I thought, there's too much pressure on the environment. Like it's almost like wrong for me to have kids. I've like surpassed this like biological imperative. I'm not going to be a slave to evolution, yada, yada, yada. And having had just conversations with very reasonable people who are far smarter than me, who are like, no, you two need to have children. And so it's now I now get, I get what they, where they're coming from. Sorry, I'm not explaining it very well. Basically, it's a very long, hard thing to answer. We will, if I was to bet, oh man, this is a big question. It's a slight favorite that we will. Yeah, it's a slight favorite that we will.
I would just say my sense, or my thought on that too, is just like, in general, it's sort of like if you, with the things you want to do or change or be a part of the world, there's really, you can put a message on, you can do whatever, but if you raise a human the way you kind of want, or it can kind of help guide or shape, or even as you get older, sort of pass down your mission or your beliefs and stuff. I just feel like there's no, there's nothing like family, right? It's like you could have a thing and motivate a lot of people and spread good information, but to have someone that you could sort of, I don't want to say mold, but like really build or help shape or teach and learn. I just feel like that's like
well, it's just a question of like opportunity cost. That's what I'm trying to see it as.
For sure. Yeah, I get that.
It's very, very important to do that. And the question is just like, how much, from, is it fair? I have to just try and evaluate what my expected positive impact is on the world, and that's very hard to do, and I probably would overvalue it anyway. And is if it's, you know, if it ends up that I then, like, I don't know how I would be if I now have a kid. Maybe I just don't want to do any of that stuff anymore and only focus on the kid now, like, and you know, like my brain, you know, from hormones, whatever, like, will just purely focus on this. And yes, that's very important to give that kid the best life I can. But does that mean that I then, you know, at what cost? I don't know. So it's just, that's the calculation I'm trying to do here. I don't know. Maybe it's, you know, maybe I'm net negative for the world in the messages I'm trying to give. That's possible too, in which case it's probably the best thing that I just focus on doing that. You know,
it's actually, when you word it like that, it's actually very, I will say this, I've got my son's 14 months, and, you know, I do podcasts, I do Twitch, I do a lot of various different things, and, you know, try to play some poker still and whatnot, but it's very true. It's complicated because, like, it really does change things. And then it's like a matter of, well, you want to be a good parent, you want to be present, you want to, you know, enjoy it and be with them, but then you also want to do things you're passionate about and do other things. So I find it very, and like, as we mentioned, time, it's ultimate currency. I mean, it's a commodity. It's like, it's very tricky because when you start breaking down, well, should I go do this instead of being with my child for that day or this hour? When you really start like thinking like that, it gets a little bit kind of wild too, because then you're kind of like, well, does it matter if I do this now? Is that really going to matter? Would I rather have watched, you know, Ben and give my son a bath than be on a call, you know, or like be with him? Right. And so it's like that stuff. I'm in a weird spot myself because, like, there's days or there's a week or I'll travel or something, but, you know, pre-COVID, it's like you start wondering and start balancing and weighing it. It's a bit intense, you know. It really is. Bill Perkins, who I know you know very well, it's one of my best friends, and got this book Die With Zero. I'm sure you've seen a little bit of that or talking about it and doing something. It's very interesting how Bill thinks about the world and stuff. But what he explained to me, which I agree with, is like phases. It's like, you know, you were growing up, you were in high school, you're in middle school or preschool, you had your best friend. Do you talk to your best friend when you're from 5? Probably not. Are you, you know, do you keep in touch with so-and-so? Then you were single, then you have a boyfriend, then you're engaged or you have a serious relationship, and then you get kids. It's like things are different. My best friends who I hung out with, like, while I was traveling the world playing poker, you know, they got 3 kids or 2 kids and they live here, and like I'm here, and it's like you have 1 kid and you're fighting for trying to do your own stuff. And it's like the different little pockets and phases of your life. It's like, it's really never the same, right? Like, you're just different parts of your life are just completely different. And so, you know, different variables or different things are that much more severe or significant or intense or time consuming. So, you know, to your point, I get what you're saying too. It is, you know, you get pregnant right now, and then there's that whole process, and then the first year, and then it's like all different, and you're learning and you're trying to do your best. And it's not just like, oh, well, I want to have a kid and be good for the world, like to add a body or someone we're going to want to raise. There's a lot of, I could see how in your brain in particular, there'd be a lot of like calculations, you know, like, what does this mean? How does that affect me? How does that affect what I want to do? So I get that a lot.
And I think it's also just like priority shift.
Exactly.
That I'm slightly, I'm just cautious of, because I know that, you know, a lot of people are like, oh no, you know, like, your priorities won't necessarily change. It's like, well, that's not a given. Like, some people are able to continue, you know, their old mindset stays the same. And, you know, whereas like, oh man, my headphones just died. Hang on, is that feeding back?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. You know, and I guess I'm just concerned that, like, my brain chemistry might change so much through the love of my child that I might, like, don't make the same, what I think are, you know, good, reasonably impartial decisions that on things that I think are really important. Basically, it's just like an unknown of like how, whether the priority shift that I think would likely happen is one that is born out of the best, I don't know, it is the most rational one. It's hard to describe, but.
Yeah, no, well, I just remember this conversation with you specifically at this time. I remember exactly where we were in the Bahamas at a private game and talking to you and Igor, and we were chatting about it. I'm just curious, you know, on a
no, it's a good question.
Yeah, so okay, well,
I'll see Igor about
I just it's me and Igor. Before we dive into questions, how is Igor doing? One of the top poker players in the world. Has he been playing as much recently? Is he going to be playing as much recently? And what's he up to?
He was just like, he basically became a an epidemiologist. He was, you know, like he was just when COVID started hitting, he was just doing calculations and simulations and like trying to figure out, you know, make predictions about what was going to happen, and he was remarkably accurate. Of course, it's Eagle, so he doesn't ever publish anything. He's like completely, no one ever sees it. He barely ever posts on social media. Much as I try and bug him to do it because he's got so many good ideas to put out there. But yeah, so he was like down an analytic rabbit hole of just like learning about it and like trying to understand what was going on and what's likely to happen with the markets and so on. So, but yeah, so he's been playing less, but he's still playing some. And he'll be playing, I'm sure, some of the WPT2 online. And what else is he doing? I mean, he's just good. It's just Igor. We've been having fun in lockdown.
That's good. That's fun is good. It is a wild time. So it's anytime you can keep busy and the mind sharp and active, it's definitely a good thing. I just worry. Sometimes I see things or hear things and you just wonder if some people just kind of lost their path or their way or their sanity at certain points, some of the stuff that you hear and see. All right, we are going to dive into some questions, and I want to ask you also about stars. So you were sponsored basically for 10 years almost. What was that? Was that a difficult decision or time? I know obviously I was with Stars. I ended up leaving. I'm with Party. You were saying you're not really playing poker, but that was that a difficult sort of choice or period, or was that just like just sort of like you just knew you weren't going to be traveling the circuit and grinding online and you just sort of were ready to?
Yeah, I mean, it just like it just, I think it fizzled out. It certainly fizzled out from my end, and I think it fizzled out from theirs too. So it's just, you know, it was very, very amicable. You know, it was, it was just like a necessary transition. My heart wasn't in it anymore. And I think they knew that too. And I'm enormously grateful for the years I had with them. It was, you know, it's a lot of great people. At least, you know, there's still some great people at that company.
Yeah.
And there certainly were back in the day as well. And they gave me just, you know, the experiences I had were just incredible. The EPT is the best tour. You know, it was the best tour at the time by far.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Great. Well, yeah, great. It's also great to see competition too in poker. I just think it is good when there's other sites pushing and moving and hopefully, you know, poker, I do believe it's a great game. Whatever happens, you know, solvers. There's like 40, maybe these questions. Let's go to the questions because there's probably people are asking. I'm curious on your thoughts on the current state of poker, but we got to dive into the questions. We're going to be here. For me, I can dig it, but
I've got like another 15, 20 minutes in me, and then I'm going to crash because I'm getting tired.
Yeah, let's get there. We got it moving. We got fired up on some tangents, but all fun stuff. So let's get over here. We are going to give you a chance for a $55 ticket on Party Poker. I'm going to give that away. If you guys want to ask a question to Liv, maybe if we don't get to all of them here, maybe she'll dive in or take a scroll and answer some later. I can't say for sure, but we're going to answer what we can. We're going to go through. So let's just kind of rapid fire. Liv, are you married?
No, but practically.
Okay, off the market. I think that question means are you available? So that we'll just take it for that. So
not available.
Not available. Sorry, guys. We didn't want to lose half the viewers right on the first day. We'll save that for now. What's the most memorable poker tournament you've played? I think we've maybe covered it.
Yeah, San Remo, probably, I guess.
It's a pretty crazy story. Literally a volcano. That talk about energy in the fate, I guess, if you will, sliding doors, right? That's a fair moment to say. Mm-hmm. In time. What about people asking about WSOP? You just said you're going to play the World Poker Tour events coming up. Do you have any plans to do on the online other stuff for WSOP, or just you already got your bracelet?
I might play a couple of WSOP events actually. Yeah, it's the WSOP. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really looked at the schedule yet, to be honest, but I'll play some.
Your triple crown hunting is the answer. You're WPT for sure. You're going to go for it. I love this question from Chris Robinson here. What is your biggest aha moment when it comes to physics and how the world works?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh man. I had like a moment where I intuitively grasped quantum mechanics. Very fleeting moment where I could like see, like I felt the uncertainty principle, you know, like how the more like why it is that when you more accurately know a particle's momentum, that you less accurately know its position. Sorry, I'm really getting tired. I was like a moment where I just like felt it, but then it like went away again.
But there's probably, I mean, some of the stuff you're doing or learning in physics, there's a lot of, I mean, you look at a question or a topic and it's kind of exciting, right? Because they're so broad, and it's so there's so much interesting research and thoughts behind it. Yeah. Very, very cool. Another guy, I think he was hoping you were, maybe this was a follow-up from the first, but he asked, why are you so beautiful? Any beauty tips out there, Liv? Any COVID beauty tips? How are you staying dialed in on physical taking care of preservation?
Especially, I haven't had my hair cut or even brushed it in a while. So yeah.
You're just winging it. You're keeping maintaining though. That's good.
It's nice not already wearing makeup. I put on a little bit of makeup for this. I was like, oh shit, this is going to go on the internet, isn't it?
But before there was I saw this clip maybe a year or two ago. Someone asked it in the chat. It rang a bell. And what show was it? I wish I could pull it up or no, but we'll just, there was a thing where you got to like, it was like a game show and you got to keep half or give half, and like you like,
golden balls.
What's it called?
Golden balls.
But golden balls, where you basically like trust a person to either split or take all of it, but it's like an equation or math thing. But you basically, I saw the clip, it was savage. Like this poor guy, you just got bluffed on his, like in hindsight, looking back on it, what was it like?
It's funny. That's the thing. Like he wasn't even meant to get voted round into the final two. I only voted him in because I felt like he would then feel indebted. But yeah, it's a pretty brutal show because it's basically like there's a clear dominant strategy in this particular one, which is like, seeing as you're only playing it once, then you have to go for steal because it's double the win rate on expectation than splitting. But at the same time, it's like it's pretty gross. I mean, it's I don't think it's really any different to bluffing someone in a poker pot. But at the same time, if I was on the show again, I think the importance of cooperation as a message is greater than what what at the time, like, my goal was to go on and win as much money as possible. So that's what my objective was. Whereas if I went on the show now, I guess my objective would be to teach people about the perils of prisoners' dilemmas and game theory.
Someone showed me this clip, and I literally, I almost felt, I was just like, it was so intense. Like it was just like the show, the idea, it was so wild to me, like the whole thing. But was it like you how much did you win versus what would have been?
Like $6,000, I think. 6K pounds.
The show's like genius. It's like it's just such like a funny little like way of doing it, but it very like intense. Like you could feel the emotion in it. Like it was very
rough. And what they don't show is I actually like cried afterwards, because you don't get to, because obviously the optimal strategy is to say, oh, I'll split with you. Like I'm going to pick steal, but then after the show we'll split, and then like their hand is forced. But producers don't let you do that, and you never meet the person before you start. Like the moment like you sit down on set. And then the moment it's done, you get taken away. You never see them again. So you don't have the opportunity to like offer like those kind of deals or offer them anything afterwards.
Right. Did he ever contact you? Or is there anything ever like?
I've received plenty of hates and death threats and all sorts from it. Like even today, I still get like hate messages from it. It's quite something.
Wow. Well, sorry, someone said it in the chat, and I completely I remember seeing this clip somewhere. I had no idea what the show was or what it was about, but I just remember that thing, and I was like, I could tell you felt bad,
So yeah, afterwards, after we've done, like the audience were booing and hissing at me, and I went into the green room, into my dressing room, and I was like, ah! And started crying, and then Jeff Carrot, the producer, the host, was like, why you played great? Why are you crying? I was like, I feel terrible. It's like I feel dirty. This is really weird. This is not what I expected to feel. It felt different to poker somehow, because it's right. Like you make some kind of, you make a verbal agreement with someone, and then
I would say maybe it's like the analogy of playing someone heads up versus like in a live game, like a one-on-one, it's more personal. Like if you lose the heads up match, it hurts more than like losing at like a pot.
Exactly.
I don't know.
But yeah, and he was like, well, come on, get it. And he was like, no, you played great. You did a good thing. And then like, buck your ideas up now. And then I had to like record my like be happy thing.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It's I have like very mixed feelings about it. Like I think I made the right decision at the time, which was also like I just started in poker as well, and I wanted to be respected by the poker community. You know, I was like quite sort of insecure and like aware of the fact that people thought I was only, you know, I was like just a dumb pretty girl, etc. And
yeah,
and I knew that I would get ripped apart by the poker community if I played it suboptimally, you know, and taken the like.
your hand is sort of forced. Like there's no way. In a way.
But I mean, really though, my goal on the show was like I was playing the game show, so my goal was to make money.
Yeah, it's a game. It's like Big Brother or Survivor. These things like there's a lot of it's a game.
Yeah, that's what makes TV. They want you to, you know, that's why they design it.
For sure. All right. I just that came up, and I did see a question in the chat. I got it like from way up. Someone asked about it. I didn't even know what they were referencing, and then I realized like they said golden balls, and I thought they were just like trolling. And then that's the name. Was that the name of the show?
Golden balls. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think that someone asking about being different, like what would you say would be a difference if you just took the women in poker as a whole, kind of like a thing? What do you think differentiate you from, say, like the typical play, I guess, say poker player, but you know what, I don't like the whole women poker deal, like how it's so different, but it's interesting to me, and you can't argue that it's like, what's the percent of women in poker? It's like, I don't know, 2%, 3%, 5%. It's like low, it's super low. Do you feel like you have, I'd ask the question differently than they ask. Do you feel you are able to capitalize with psychology or using that you are a woman to your advantage? Like what ways do you feel that you are able to capitalize on that?
I mean, presumably, yes. It's difficult because I've never been a man in poker, so I have no point of comparison. But I don't know. So yeah, it's almost impossible to generalize and say, oh, women have this advantage because of that. But if there is one thing, I guess it's that, like, on average, people have, you know, women tend to be stereotyped more often. So, and I mean, I catch myself doing it, you know, when I would sit down at a table and there'll be a woman at the table, I would stereotype her the same as the other male players would probably stereotype her if I don't know anything about her. You know, the stereotype usually is that women tend to be less aggressive or like more easily bluffed, etc. So that, as long as you're aware of that, you know, then you can capitalize upon that, because it means someone's playing, you know, wrongly against you, provided you are actually more aggressive.
Right.
So there's that advantage. And I mean, I certainly had, outside of the game, but within the industry, a ton of advantages. You know, I would never have had the attention that I got for winning an EPT or anything, you know, had I not been a girl. And I've always been very aware of that. And it was honestly one of the reasons I actually was, you know, I made such a strong push to become known in poker, because I knew that you know, I had an advantage there in terms of.
I always used to think that. I would always think about like women and stuff, and I was like, man, if I were alert to the scene and the situation, it's a fun game, it's a great thing, and you really, like, your EV is so much bigger as a woman if you like really try to go for it because of that, right? Like it is, right. Like you just have such a bigger...
There's advantages there. Sure. Less so than they used to be. You know, I think I got in kind of at the golden times a little bit. I think if you're a woman trying to make it to the, you know, there's still some of that, but there's less sponsorship stuff flying around, you know, there's less opportunities there. So it's not as easy now.
For sure. I do think I want to ask about the current state of poker, and what you think. Do you think there's another push? US, Pennsylvania pass, Michigan pass. Do you feel that, let's say the US just turned on, if they said California, let's run it, New York, Florida, you know, whatever, turn on the lights, poker's back. In theory, it could be bigger than it was maybe in its heyday or close to it. Would that be enough of an allure, because you have such a strong reputation in poker and name? Would that bring you back if you're like, oh, if someone's like, oh, they're not really, you still gonna be casual, get your triple crown and roll? Is that where you're at?
I've like I said, I feel, I mean, I just feel like I've gotten what I needed. You know, I've gotten, I just don't have the same fire for that. But I have fire for just more fires for other things right now. You know, I want to go to space. I want to. Makes sense. It's just, I've got other things on my mind that I just don't have the mental space for it anymore. What's your favorite scientist quote, or maybe, I don't know, even not if that even makes sense. Some quotes in physics, or some quotes that you like. I mean, like, look up any Carl Sagan quote. He's just insane. Like, it's or Richard Feynman. Incredible quotes coming out of them. Nick Bostrom. So, yeah, so many. But Carl Sagan or Richard Feynman are usually good go-tos.
Very cool. Best insight you've had playing poker? What's like one of the things that you've taken away from the game that you just sort of learned as a whole out of life?
Why that your intuitions are not perfect and don't over rely on them, and that if you grayscale thinking is just so much better than like this is either right or wrong, or this like black and white thinking. Basically like quantifying and putting things into probabilities is just so helpful in everything in life when you're trying to like make decisions, and that's what poker taught me.
Awesome. So what do you like the most about Igor? What draws you to Igor? You know, it's you're in poker again, the numbers game. A lot of guys, who doesn't want a successful, well-known, well put together, poker player? Like why did Igor, out of all the guys, you're just on like, you're basically on the Bachelorette, right? Like guys, you're just around men all the time. Like how did Igor get to lock in and become a 6-year almost marriage now, whatever, you guys call it?
I don't know, like he's just the perfect fit. He was a good friend for a year and a half before we ever even got together.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that. So
he was just we were good friends, very platonically, and then we realized we were attracted to each other at some point and tried that out and just were inseparable since. And he's just the perfect guy for me. He's just hilarious and insane in a brilliant way, and a just super genius, and just like endlessly patient and empathetic. He's like just one of those rare mixes of someone who has like all the like intellect, like the analytical intellect, but also this incredible like emotional intelligence.
Right. And the guy that can turn it on and hit Burning Man and dominate and go for it and have fun and let loose. So yeah, he's got range.
Exactly. That's a very good way of putting it. He's got range. He's got
range. Very nice. Big Igor fan myself. I love Igor. Burning Man. That might have been the peak of my, I think that year, 2014, like just letting loose, going there for the first time and kind of heard about it for a while. Antonio, I don't know if he got you guys to go or what was like ultimately.
Yeah, Antonio, of course. He's the ultimate recruiter. He's very good at that.
He's tough. It's hard to say. It's hard to fade Antonio invite on this stuff. He doesn't sell them often, but when he does, he goes hard and he delivers hard. So that was fun. I think that was probably the most the peak of my just like let loose, having fun and wild time. So yeah, I hope we get to go back again. Do you think is there I don't even know the Burning Man update. Did they say not this year, later the year? It's paused. I haven't followed
it's just not happening this year.
Just not.
I think it's possibly back next year. Yeah.
Okay. Someone asked if you have kids. I'll answer for you. That's a no that I know of. Actually, no kids, correct?
So as far as I know, yeah.
As far as you know, it's a little different for men and women. Men, it's more possible to not know. Women usually,
but no.
You would probably know. Actually, I've never thought about that, but yeah, you can't say that. So it's a no. Men can make that joke. All right, how about a couple more? You got to go, Liv. You're falling asleep. I know soon. It's what time is it? 1 a.m.
1 a.m.
1 a.m. I mean, there's a lot. I'm gonna ask you afterwards.
Hang on, there was a good one in here. 1 second.
Let me go to the top and just scroll down. So we've gotten to last time you played poker. Why did you retire? Any of these ones?
How was it working with Grimes? Because I filmed a funny video with her on a unboxing. Yeah, you can watch it on YouTube. We unboxed Death Stranding, which is this video game. She's hilarious. She's one of the funniest people I've ever met.
Who was that?
Grimes.
That's just you type it in. It's a video like of you guys.
Yeah, if you search my name Grimes, she's the musician.
Okay.
We played a video game and unboxed it and tried to do a review of it, and it was hilarious.
I will definitely check that out. What's the biggest tournament score you've had online? We saw the 1.6 million, 7 million live.
That's it. Oh, online. Sorry. 150K. I won the Sunday warm up. I think that was the biggest. Yeah.
100K scores online aren't easy because the buy-ins are generally
right. Yeah, I've only had a
yeah.
couple of 100K scores online, but
Yeah.
that's one. Yeah.
The Igor question, I like that. That's a good answer. Poker nowadays. What do you think about the online state like or live state? What do you think is going to happen with COVID? Since you study and you're kind of you're into the physics, when will live poker? Do you think in 2020 will there be a stop? Is there going to be, or is this just so
I mean, there's already live poker in the Czech Republic, right?
Or like a series. I mean, like a star party putting up saying like, let's go live and play like our normal
international series. Like, I mean, I guess
hard, right?
My 50-50 point would be December, maybe.
December. Yeah. So I think, November, the party million in Bahamas is tough. Like that's like, because even if stuff kind of opens back up, it's just hard to predict. How do people react? Do people want to try?
Right. And it's like it's a lot of cost for the organizers to put on where like no guarantee that people will actually come. I mean, I think a lot of poker players don't give a shit. They'll go and play anyway. But I don't know. It's like a big risk for them to even put it on. Like it must be so hard to decide.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do. Tell me how many more, because there's 100. So give me a number.
5 more.
5. That's good. That was like the deal the card. I was thinking 3 or 4. Liv, the 5 is a nice bonus. That means you're enjoying it. I like that. They're enjoying the podcast. That was good. We didn't lose her yet. So
I've had a good time.
Yes, that's been fun. When did you start your poker career? When would you say you were a poker player? When did you say, you know what, this is for sure what I'm doing? You said you went.
I answered this earlier, so let's do another one because I don't know, 2008, 2009, something like that.
But would that be what you define that was when you started, when you left the job to go to the Bellagio for this tournament, or that was basically like I'm going the path. Okay. Have you ever went crazy because of money? Have you ever, like with one of the big scores or something, have you ever kind of lost touch of you think looking back you maybe got a little out of control or too excited?
No, not really. I mean, a bit. Like I got lazy after winning San Remo for like 6 months, where I just I downplayed the luck factor in my head. And so I got a little complacent in terms of like studying, and I and then I just like I assumed I just must be really, really good to have won that big tournament so quickly. And so played in probably tougher tournaments than I should have, but I still didn't like, I was still not like a huge degen or like that, anything like that. I've never really been a huge degen.
Okay, pretty down the center of the fairway. What about biggest cooler? Do you have a moment that stands out, like in a World Series or a WPT or somewhere where you were just like the equity or final table and like you couldn't believe what happened? Do you have anything that stands out?
I mean, with the World Series Europe, the year that Phil Hellmuth won the main event, we were 17 left, 16 left. It wasn't a cooler. I got Joe Chonged. I always get Joe Chonged. He always gets
just flat. You have like queens or kings and someone five.
Yeah. No, I mean, I had ace queen and he snapped off my. I love Joe. Don't get me wrong. I love Joe. But I've never forgiven him for this hand. He just obviously I wanted him to do it. He snapped off my 22 BB shove with ace 10 offsuit, basically on a form of bubble with 2 tables left for considering everyone was kind of short, I would have been like quite comfortable, and then he riveted it, and I never forgiven him for that.
You had ace queen. I'm telling you, that's the worst hand in poker. I'm just gonna start binning it. I never win with it against it. I just can't. I just don't like that hand. But yeah. All right. So
no, I don't know. I've never had the memory for remembering hands. I just never can. It's just in and out.
That's a nice trait. What is let's do 2 more. I don't like. There's a lot of women questions. I mean, in terms of women,
one woman question.
Yeah, like I think it's it's pretty obvious. There's a handful of very successful, well-known women. Give me your favorite. What's like one of your favorite hands? Not aces. Give me like a fun hand. Do you have like a Jack 9 suited, Jack 10 suited?
I don't have anything like that.
You just
don't ask me hand questions.
You play the ranges. You know what to do in what spot. That's what you like to see.
Well, I mean, I don't anymore, but I did presumably.
You did. All right. Where? This question is. or what about sports? Give us a little bit of athletic. Do you do any type of you're very fit in terms of you stay active, you do hiking and such, but do you actually play? Did you play any sports? Were you a star growing up? Give us
I did a lot of running. And I played like all the team sports at school, like hockey, netball, that kind of stuff, field hockey. Eagle and I have just got into tennis because there's a tennis court next to our house. And it's, I almost want to live stream our tennis games because
you're beating him in tennis.
No, I'm close. He is slightly better than me, but barely, even though he thinks he's much better than me, which is just insane. Because
he should be. I mean, that's one of those sports where it really does matter. Like it's a disparity. Like men, like that if you're beating him or it's close, that's
right. Well, considering like we both played the same amount, like we're both basically beginners, but I feel like we both learn like pretty fast, and we're like so insanely competitive, and all of our matches are we just scream at each other, like purely like it's not actually anger, but like semi-anger. Like we cannot play a casual game or like let's have a fun knockabout. No, like there's
you guys are playing there's a lot of pride.
We're playing for blood every time, whatever we do, whatever sport, whatever thing we try out. Like our friends joke like, oh, we'll play Hanabi, or it's like some collaborative game. We have it does not compute. We have to be adversarial whenever we play games. So yeah.
I love it. Well, I'll just say this, that I'm seeing a lot of questions, and literally most of these we have touched on or covered. So we really did nail it. I think that's almost that's about all we can say. So I'm gonna load up this $55 ticket. I'm gonna let you tell me when to select it. Give me a second. How about leave us with a thought in the world in this moment in time? Do you have any kind of, I don't know, nothing sappy, but what would be sort of a message? Give me something that you would say for people out there to maybe, get through this time, or just think about it and maybe use your time wisely. Give me some sort of message.
Okay. We live in a time of enormous uncertainty, and as poker players and poker fans, we are perhaps better equipped than most people at understanding the importance of like humility and nuance in our views and not being overly certain about anything. And also how important it is to think probabilistically about things and to try and think about things in terms of like expected value and cost benefits and seeing the other side and like making, trying to understand the truth of the world as opposed to like whatever our preconceived ideas are. And at the same time, understanding that others are trying to do, I don't know.
No, I actually, that makes a lot of sense.
Try for rationality.
You believe I for sure, like I think poker players are people that understand games and logic and probability. It's an advantage, and you should be able to sort of understand like this is part of life. And these things
help others to think probabilistically and with nuance and with grayscale. I think that is one of the most important things that the world is sorely lacking, and poker players have an advantage at that, and therefore I think it's their duty to try and help their friends and family think about things in that way as well.
Okay, now I want to leave with two predictions. One, crypto, Bitcoin, that type of stuff. Do you believe it? Do you have any feelings on crypto at all? Bitcoin, do you like it? It's sort of part of poker.
I enjoyed investing in it in 2017. Didn't enjoy investing in it as much in 2018. No, I think there's like with all new technologies, there's pros and cons. I like the idea of having like immutable ledgers where, information can be stored in and not filled with afterwards, because I think we're seeing problems in the world in that regard. And it like gives a form of like security against over censoring and over controlling states. But at the same time, it's a bit of a Pandora's box, because we need a certain degree of, I don't know, I don't think all surveillance is bad, particularly as like with the things we talked about, like the need of, keeping track of perhaps the potentially dangerous technologies that are falling into more and more people's hands. So pros and cons, don't know.
Okay. And last thing, poker prediction 5-10 years from now. Do you feel online poker, Party's made some changes, real names, no HUDs? What do you believe about the future of online poker? Do you think that there's, I mean, there's solvers, there's this, there's that. Do you feel like is poker going to stick around in the way we know it, or do you think it's going to be big changes if you had to look a decade from now?
In 10 years' time, like I just don't see. Honestly, I don't see how in 10 years you can we're going to have real-time GTO solvers. How you would have high stakes poker continue, any form of really high stakes poker, or even medium or low stakes poker running. I think the game will still exist, and maybe we'll see new formats emerge, and I think we'll see a resurgence towards live poker if poker's still around at all. But it's going to be I don't know. It's maybe online companies can come up with fun new variants that make it really hard to for solvers to solve them. But I think there's a few years left, but I don't know. I wouldn't be especially optimistic over 10 years. No.
Okay, there you heard it. So we did copy and paste. Liv, I'm going to let you, on the behalf of yourself and myself and Party Poker, $55 ticket. Hopefully someone parlays it up in Vinks. Let's you tell me when, and we're going to roll it.
All right. What do I do? I just tell you. I just say now.
Whatever you want. You can say anything you want, but so you need me to know that it's now. Whatever that means for you.
Now.
That now works. I get it. You can only draw. Technology's hard, so that didn't go as planned. You can only draw on your own tweets. Oh, I think I went to.
You logged into the right account?
This feels like my own tweet. I think this is it.
Seems like it's your own tweet.
It feels like it's mine. I don't know anymore who's what property. That's working. So we did something wrong. This works. Someone's going to win it. They're going to take it. Liv, who is it? Let's see who gets it. This guy, I'm on to this guy. I think he might have got a solver for I already know this name. This guy's won giveaways before. Look at that. He's been, I mean, and so is there a cutoff on giveaways? Like how, I mean, is he cheating the giveaway system? Or
I mean, maybe just give away another one. I don't know what to say.
Do another one? I gotta give this guy one. I'm gonna do one. I will do an extra one because I just feel like this guy's working the system.
There's been a lot of questions, and there've been a lot of really good. I don't know. There's good people in the chat today.
There's great people in the chat. There's a lot of there's one guy in the chat, I will say, saying he's never forgiven you after that golden balls. To your point, the guy said I've never forgiven her about. There's people I can't imagine. That feels like a polarizing
game theory. I don't know what to say.
I respect it. I think I get it. It makes a lot of sense, and that honestly made me laugh. I just thought it was so the production on it's so intense. But Liv, this was a treat. It was great to catch up. I hope to see you very soon, even though who knows, it might not be in 2020. But I will see you at some tables during the World Poker Tour on Party Poker, and I might call in if we go deep and I'm live on. If you're at the final table, I might have to call in live on the stream and just say hi and say get that triple crown. So just don't ice me if I call you and it's 4 a.m. and you're at a final table with WPT. You better pick up. All right.
All right. Thanks for having me on, Jeff. It was good to see you.
That was a lot of fun. All right, guys. Liv Boeree, give her a follow on Instagram, Twitter. She got a website. She does this. She does that. She'll come speak to you if you need. Pay attention. Get your alerts on, and we'll see her at the tables very soon. So thanks, everyone. Podcast tomorrow with Dan Fleshman at 12 p.m. noon. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Night.